Hello, YouTube. This is Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast, and we are here recording it live on YouTube. And we are, doing the live show for book club number 15 for the Wastelands. Yeah. So we've come right along quite a ways in this one here, and we're over the halfway point now. Moving towards the 60 percentile here.
Starting at the 60 percentile according to my Kindle app.
Really? No, it shows me at 56%.
Yeah. Subchapter 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Page 420 of 702, 60%.
That's weird.
Do you have something at the end of yours that I don't have?
Maybe. But yeah, mine shows 56%.
Yeah, mine says 60.
So either way, we're right in that ballpark here. So we are going to we're going to get started here real quick. Let's go ahead and hit the intro and then jump right into this book club where we're going to be discussing everyone's stories before we move towards the city in the distance here. Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a listen to the intro.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for book club number 15. Look at that. I'm looking at the calendar here. I almost said 16. 15 for The Wastelands, 1991's The Wasteland. I just realized it recently that we never really put these in context. I know
That's true.
As Dark Tower fans, we kind of know, but it is good to throw that out every once in a while, kind of where these all fit. So 1991 is when this book came out, and we are about a little in the realm of 60% through this book, as we are now going to basically finish out this chapter, and basically the last bit, it looks like, from the way the chapters are subheaded, it looks like this will be the last bit before we get to Lud itself, which is obviously on the distance. We've moved on from River Crossing. But yeah, first we want to, of course, dive into the announcements. The first thing I want to do is talk about the calendar real quick. We have a little bit of a strange thing happening in June, and that'll be the next book club. So if you're a book club follower only, you'll see something a little bit different. Now, in terms of here on the podcast, nothing will really be different. It'll release the same time as it normally does. But if you are one of our live listeners, we already told you before that Roundtable 122 is moving from the June 4th to June 11th. But what we are actually going to have something very unique, because we are also moving book club number 16th to the 11th. So we are going to record at 2 o'clock our time, which is 4 o'clock Pacific, is when we'll start.
4 o'clock Eastern.
Eastern. I'm sorry,
Pacific.
Not Pacific. Yes, Pacific would be 1 o'clock.
Yes.
And then we're going to go for a couple hours, and then we will take a small break, and then we will come back and do the book club immediately after. So that'll be a long, fun day for 2 episodes back to back.
Yeah.
For people overseas, that might help a little bit. Maybe also give a bigger range for people to listen in. So yeah, just be aware of that. If you are a live listener, we're totally okay if you cannot join us live for the whole thing, because of course that will be long, although we've had long episodes before. So
we've had I think we went back and we actually looked at it. I think our longest episode is very well close to 4 hours.
Oh, I think we went over.
Did we go over 4?
Yeah, I think the longest we ever had was over 5.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not that long.
Yeah, we've hit 4 on some a little bit more occasions than we've only had one that went really, really long.
Wow.
And I think one was right around 5 hours. So
am I mixing it up? I swear we talked about this just a few days ago.
Yeah,
and it was
within the last probably year or less, we've probably done a couple episodes that were pushing the 4-hour mark. So,
jeez.
It'll be a little bit of a long one, but that is the announcements. But in terms of for that, so if you want to join us live, it'll be all on that day on the 11th, from 2:00 Pacific or Mountain Time through basically 6:15 ish, right in there somewhere. We'll be recording 2 episodes back to back with a small break in between. If you're on the podcast side, don't worry, it'll hit your podcast feeds the normal time as it would. Even though we are recording them at the same time, we'll release them at the adequate 2-week intervals, or fortnight intervals.
Well, with a little bit of a delay for the original episode. Should be on the 4th. That one is actually going to get delayed a little bit, so you're actually going to get 2 in 2 straight weeks.
In 2 weeks, that's true.
Yes,
that's true.
So it's not normal release schedule for the podcast side. It'll be 2 episodes recorded live on the 11th, one released that following week,
probably the 12th,
and then the other one will drop on the podcast side the following week. But they will still be available on YouTube. We'll still be live for both shows. 2 separate videos, 2 separate times going live. So you really want to get those notifications for when we're going live, especially since we're going to be shutting down the first one and then starting up the second one.
Yeah, and today's episode is the last one that I had scheduled out because I figured something was going on in June. So I will get those posted here when I get this episode posted. So it'll be on your notifications. It'll be there where you can kind of see it coming, probably here in the next couple days. But then jumping into the normal introductions, we want to first of all, we don't have to worry about spoilers. We have a spoiler section in our book clubs now, but it is saved for the very end. The screen will change if you're on the YouTube side, and we will make it very clear from the auditory side for anyone on the podcast. We will let you know very clearly before we move to the spoiler section, but everything, probably 90% of this episode will be spoiler free, and all the spoilers will be segregated to the very end of the episode and will not be a danger to anyone. So if you haven't finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, this is a safe episode unless somehow you are further back than we are, and at the rate we're going, I don't know how that's possible.
It could be someone coming new to the Dark Tower.
That's true, but we definitely have not been, I guess we're kind of like Roland, we're plodding our way through here. We're not going through in any speedy manner. So that is the spoiler. Like I said, we'll warn you before we get into that section. Next up, if you want to find us, you can do that. Find us on Apple Podcasting. You can stream us on Spotify or Stitcher, or find us on any podcasting service that's out there. And then if you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those, we'd appreciate that. It always helps all the different algorithms and all those other artificial intelligences in the making.
Skynet.
Yeah, all the Skynet.
North Central Positronics.
Yes, indeed. All those things that are that will evolve into those things, or algorithms, and whatever. And that helps when you subscribe, rate, and review. All those things help those algorithms push the show to more people, so it definitely helps grow our content. So we would appreciate that. If you want to find the show notes, you can do that over at darktowerpalaver.com. We don't really have show notes for book club episodes, but we do have the new questions for new listeners. If you're a new listener, we welcome you to our extended quartet, and over there you can answer those questions. And kind of like in this section that we're going to cover today, where everyone gets their story straight and everyone kind of lays it on the line and
puts their cards on the table.
Yeah, and catches up, and that kind of really brings the content together. That's kind of what we've welcomed people to do pretty much since we've started the show around 6 years ago. And those questions are ones we've refined over the years. You can answer one of them, you can answer all of them, but email those into us if you're a new listener. So you can always check out that over at darktowerpalaver.com. Plus, all of our links for everything is over there. So if any of the things here in the announcements you forgot somehow, just go over to the darktowerpalaver.com and you'll find little icons that will link you to everything, all of our social media, all of our different everything Dark Tower Palaver.
Yeah.
Then if you want to support the show, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We have like monthly hangouts where we have special episodes. We recently did 2 episodes for Hearts in Atlantis, as well as you'll have access to our Patreon or our Discord server. So you have a weekly or basically daily, hourly, minutely access to us. So if you want to torment Peter, which is always the fun thing to do, you can always do that over there all the time instead of having to wait a fortnight between tormenting Peter, because I couldn't imagine having to wait that long between tormenting you. That would drive me insane.
That's why you text me things all the time.
Yes, that's true. And then if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know how to do that.
Best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. And then, like we were mentioning before, we stream our shows here on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. And then, like I said before, subscribe the videos. But most importantly, when you subscribe, you get the ability to ring the bell, which is YouTube jargon for get notifications.
Yeah.
So, especially with the change next month in June, do that. Also, that notifies you when we upload exclusive content, which we should be having something for that this month.
Yes.
Are we going to announce Can I announce that?
We are in May, so yes.
Can I announce that?
I mean, I think we already have.
I think we've already... Have we already announced? I think
Yeah.
we did. We are absolutely doing a reaction video for Firestarter.
Yes.
So we're going
and not in like the fashion of like we're going to watch it on screen necessarily, not the normal YouTube reaction videos, but we're going to go see it, and then once we've seen it, we'll kind of have a reaction video. We are going to have a section on the podcast as well to talk about it, but we're going to kind of have a short kind of YouTube length reaction to Firestarter.
Like if you walked out of the theaters with us, what would our reaction be?
Yes.
Because like we just went and saw Doctor Strange Thursday night together with a group of friends. And every time we see a movie, we stand outside for anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour discussing the film and what parts we liked, what parts we didn't like, and everything like that. And so we kind of just want to take that and put it on the YouTube side for Firestarter, Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
All this stuff that's being adapted for King going forward. We kind of want to look at doing that for each of those.
Yeah, which I think that'll work out well, kind of the YouTube bite-sized bit. And then on the podcast we'll have here, probably within the next month, we'll have an episode where at the tail end of a roundtable, but not at the very tail end, but in the Palaver section, we'll have a section where we'll kind of go through and talk about it in depth for anyone. So you guys, if you guys see it as well, if you guys watch it on streaming, or if you guys see it in theaters and want to be part of that conversation, feel free, because it is still going to happen on the podcast as well, because podcasts, of course, are much longer form.
Exactly.
So that's how we're going to kind of break it out. So yeah, look forward to that here, as well as I'm guessing there's got to be a trailer for Salem's Lot right? before too long.
Comes out in September.
Yeah, it comes out in September. So it seems like to me
something,
maybe even with Firestarter, there may be.
That's the right place to do it. I just don't know if it's like the same studio or
whatnot.
But that doesn't mean anything for trailers.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't matter.
Anyways,
so
to finish off, our social medias are Twitter is @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then Instagram is Dark Tower Palaver, all one word. Facebook.com/DarkTowerPalaver. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/users/DarkTowerPalaver. You got the main logo there where it says just Dark Tower Palaver. And then you got the true one, the hashtag Tad is terrible, also available. And there's different things available. Pillows, stickers.
Yes.
I need to get a new sticker. I got a new water bottle. I need a new sticker.
Yeah.
I should buy like 5. I should put one on your car. I really should.
But it's slanderous, though. That would be unwise.
It's not slander. It's truth.
No, I don't think so.
Yes.
So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. So we are in book 2 of this. This is actually book 3, but the way book 3 is separated is there's 2 books within the books. There's book 1 and book 2. Book 1 was titled Jake. Book 2 is titled Lud. And the subtitle to book 2, Lud, is A Heap of Broken Images. And we are currently in chapter 4 of that, which is titled Town and Quartet. And as I mentioned before, we are going to wrap this chapter today. So we will be next in June when we meet up again for a book club. We'll be starting chapter 5, which I don't know what the title is because that's not in this section. That's not this section.
We're not worried about that yet.
Yes, exactly.
We're not looking ahead.
Can't look ahead too far.
Can't peek.
So, all right. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. So we are currently in subchapter 18 of chapter 4, we are. They have just left River Crossing, and I'm trying to remember what it was exactly. We had a long
so it's
audio clip was the last thing that we did. I remember
Roland just turns and just walks off the road. It's like, okay, it's time to tell stories. Basically, if we're just going to sum it up, kind of.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
All right, let's go. They see the river send. They see the bridge.
Yeah.
They talk about it, and then Roland's like, okay, story time.
And then, of course, we got the line from our intro. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
Yep.
So that's...
There's a couple of them in this section.
Yeah, we have one more in this section today that we're going to cover.
Yeah.
That will be another little thing from our intro there. So let's go ahead and dive into subchapter 18. Subchapter 18, it starts off here, and Susanna is thinking that up until River Crossing, she always saw Roland as a kind of Wyatt Earp type, kind of a frontier cop. But since River Crossing, she now sees him for what he is, a diplomat, a mediator, and even a teacher. She sees that he is more of a knight than a bounty hunter, and she also realizes that this is still his time, and that his time has not passed. And because of the way that people in River Crossing reacted to him, she realized they wouldn't have done that if like he was from a bygone era. But no, this is still his era. The world may have fallen and moving on or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Roland's time has passed.
Like if a knight showed up today, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, he's like, I'm not.
What are you doing wearing cosplay? Like I wouldn't respect him.
Yeah,
but if a police officer walked up that looked like he was from the 70s, I'd still be like, oh, hello, officer. Like, nice to see you.
Unless it's a village person.
Don't trust the village people. But that's kind of like what she's talking about here. Is it's like not from a bygone era. Like a marshal from the 1870s.
Yeah.
Big old handlebar mustache and everything.
Yeah.
Not gonna be like, okay, that's a police officer. That's not what I'm gonna think.
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing when it comes to knights. If you're on a Grail quest and you end up in a cave and find a knight, you better respect him.
yeah. Choose wisely.
I wouldn't brush him off as a cosplayer.
No.
That would be choosing poorly. So
that's true.
Just kind of a few notes from this section here. Just great writing from King, because ultimately he's trying to convey exactly this, and maybe even discovering it himself. Because I think up to this point, what was your thoughts on Roland? Did you perceive all these other elements to him up until this point, or because we've seen him kind of as that. Like, I just don't think that we've really seen him as anything other than kind of we see he's capable, but I don't know that we necessarily see him as a diplomat and a knight and all these other things. I really think this may be kind of King discovering this a little bit and kind of expanding what Roland is. He's no longer just, the man with no name type thing. He's kind of expanding what Roland is. Or am I wrong? Do you perceive that we were let in on this earlier?
No, I kind of get the idea that we had a little bit of it earlier, because we do see Gilead, we see what it's like, we see Hax the cook and everything like that, so we get a little bit of taste of what Gilead was like with there. But is that still in Roland? Is that still who he is a different question. I'm kind of pivoting your question into a different one. I didn't necessarily think that he wasn't that. I just thought that had died. A lot of similarities here to Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. He's a ranger, not a heir. That's kind of how I take it with Roland, and that's honestly how I took it here, because my first time reading this came so closely. Remember, this is right after I read Lord of the Rings for the first time. So, and then we had just seen Two Towers when I was reading this for the first time. So that's where a lot of it is like
maybe Return of the King.
It might have been
Return of the King was 2004, and
it might have even.
I think you started reading it after the last book was published.
That's true, I did.
So
so it very well could have had Return of the King vibes as well. It's like, oh, okay, there is another side to him. It's not dead and gone. That's kind of what I was thinking. Is like, okay, there's that there. Like we see like the formal court. I need you, bondsman. That kind of thing. That formalness there. That tradition.
So I guess maybe the knightly side there is a little bit there, but I think kind of like the diplomat, like this holistic of what Susanna is seeing here.
Right.
I don't know that I've really interpreted maybe the knight side, but like teacher, mediator, diplomat, I don't think I saw any of those things in Roland maybe up until this point. So I don't know. I just wonder. Just because I didn't perceive it doesn't mean that King didn't already have that in mind. But I do kind of wonder. Either King's revealing this to us more clearly, or he's discovering it for himself as he's writing this here. But I think even if he did know it before, it was done subtly, and I think it's too important to allow readers to miss the nuance. So I think here he's just stating it clearly through a character's thoughts. So I just think it's a brilliant way to write it, because it doesn't really feel on the nose, and like what, because I think if it was revealed to us at all, it would have been revealed during the time of River Crossing, which we just saw. So I think it's kind of one of those things where King's almost like almost recapping it to where it's like, cool, I did all those new like subtle nuanced things to kind of show you these different levels of Roland, but if you happen to miss that, if you're maybe like Roland that doesn't catch on to those
Slap
things,
in the face.
yeah, here's a recap of it through Susanna's eyes to just really put a point on
This is where you put the sign on the side of the road saying this way.
Yeah.
You know, when you're trying to like figure it out in a mystery and everything, it's like, oh, look, there's a genuine clue right there and everything.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it was never missing. I just think that it was, oh, he's changed. He's not that person anymore. That's how I always took it.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So I don't know. I think it's cool because it's definitely expanding the world a little bit here. It feels like to me because it's adding more to the gunslinger mystique.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know, which is cool.
It's the difference between Aragorn in Lord of the Rings and Mad Max. Mad Max's character is changed. He had a fundamental change when that disaster hit, and he is now a different character than he was before when he had a family. That's kind of how I took it. Is that's what I thought Roland was up until we got to River Crossing. Was that Aragorn's not really like the best example. It was just buried in Aragorn. It just had to be brought back out.
Yeah, exactly. And he is hiding it as well, right? Like
and
denying it.
He kind of had to.
And he was denying it too. He was kind of fighting his own destiny a little bit too. So which
he's
I don't
like,
think Roland's doing.
That's not what. He's like, I don't want to be king. I don't want that and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Roland is just no. You know what? It happened.
Very unlike Simba, who wanted to be king.
Yeah.
And then got all bitchy when he finally got it. I don't get it. He should have just been happy and leaned into it there.
Well, you know, if you get there by murder, some of us, Chad, who have souls, feel kind of bad about murdering our father.
That's true because he did do it, right?
No.
Like Scar said, "What have you done?"
Why do you always side with the bad guy? How can you side with Scar? Like, serious? Like, you're going to earn a hashtag Tad is terrible for
Jeremy
Disney
Irons
movie.
is amazing. That's
Jeremy
why.
Irons is amazing, but he's always a bad guy.
And if it comes down to Jeremy Irons or Jonathan Taylor Thomas, I'm taking I'm taking Jeremy Irons.
What about Matthew Broderick?
Same thing.
Shit.
Jeremy. Now,
hashtag Tad is
James
terrible.
Earl Jones,
Oh.
I would side with him over Jeremy Irons, certainly.
But he kills Mufasa.
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
Oh,
Oh man! And hello, Agamorphy. Good to have you with us here, as well as Spencer, Carol. Welcome everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. Lost track of the chat a little bit there. And then my next note here. Also, Susanna is the only character that makes sense to have this thought because she's the only one that lived in the Western Age. By the quote unquote, because by the time Jake shows up in the late 70s, Westerns are already pretty much dead. You know, there was still a little bit of like cool John Wayne and his like way beyond the age he should have been to still making Westerns. Maybe he was making a couple here and there, but by and large, those
Punch John Wayne.
Yeah, the late 70s. I mean, Jake's 77, right? So I don't remember. Depends on when he was pulled, but it may have been the age of Star Wars at that point. And yeah, just Westerns are long gone by that point.
Cinema definitely took a change.
Maybe not long gone, but they were certainly the Westerns were no longer in vogue. Definitely by the time Eddie in the 80s, Westerns are fucking dead. Like there's
there's still Westerns all through the 80s.
Yeah, not many.
Even a little bit into
not
the
many.
90s, but it's definitely not as it's definitely not as popular as other genres of movies.
No, I mean like because during Susanna's time, Westerns would have been one of the biggest genres out there. And it definitely
the 50s and 60s, full of Westerns.
Exactly. Not only on film but also on television. So it's just one of those things that she would be the one that would be most privy to like the overall Western like vision, I guess. Because Eddie, you know, he wouldn't have had as much experience, maybe unless he was watching something on cable or something.
Which would be what he watches, you know. But also at the same time, think about Eddie going down to like I think of like it. You know, the Aladdin Theater. They don't play the new movies. They play the classics, you know?
Yeah.
Bride of Frankenstein, Wolfman, Gunsmoke, and you know, those other John Wayne
But I think
movies.
Susanna, she's in the prime. Yeah, she's in. I mean,
this is where these movies headline.
Like Sergio Leone's movies would have been right in the middle of their releases, right at the time she was drawn, wasn't it? Wasn't his in the early to late 60s? I
thought it was late 60s into the 70s.
No, late 70s is when you get into some of the later Eastwood movies. Well, quote unquote, later for those times.
Yeah, because isn't there a pivot then in the 70s where he pivots over to like
Dirty Harry and the more modern stuff that isn't Western. So but then by the time 80s were, and of course, yes, like you mentioned, there are a couple westerns here and there speckled in the 80s and 90s, but those are like kind of the
2 points for Tad, 64, 65, and 66 for the three Sergio Leone.
Yeah,
Man with No Name.
Yeah,
literally the year she's drawn.
And those are ones that kind of redefined westerns in a lot of ways. So before that, and the time that she would have grown up would have been the classic era. She would have been watching John Wayne and
Silverado and
all those
Rio Bravo and all those ones.
Yeah, she would have all the stuff your dad watches. She would have. That's the stuff.
You remember my dad's collection, don't you?
Not to mention like that, but also like Gunsmoke and all the stuff on television. So yeah, she just seems to be the one that of the three, it makes the most sense for her to really like early on connect Roland to some of these like these classic cinema and television cowboys, and then so for her to be the one that kind of realizes the difference, it makes the most sense for her. So yeah, she's at the height of the culture fixation of westerns, both on TV and cinemas. That's the last bit of my notes. So makes a lot of sense to me overall. Okay, so you didn't have anything on this section, so let's go ahead and move on to the next little bit here. It says, in the light of this revelation about Roland's nature, she realizes how clearly Roland had quote-unquote managed them since the speaking ring. Every time they had started talking in a way that would have led to the palaver of comparing notes, he had turned the conversation to another direction, and so smoothly that none of them had noticed, including her, who was up to her neck in the civil rights era before being drawn. So I love this because Susanna is, Roland said it earlier in this book, Susanna is the more natural gunslinger between her and Eddie. Like she seems to come to it all so much more naturally. And it seems like even with the teaching, Roland said, she was ahead of Eddie with everything. She would learn it quicker and stuff. And here it's the same kind of thing. So to catch on to the fact of all this, it just makes total sense that she would be the one that catches on the quickest.
It's happened a couple times now with her where she's caught things like that.
Yeah.
Even we're only in book 3, little over halfway through book 3. So she's been in maybe a book total so far.
Yeah.
And she's already caught a couple things like that with Roland.
Yeah, including early in this book when she kind of talks about the shitty way that he was treating her. So there's that. And also, I wanted to mention with the civil rights mention, I don't think King really dives into it, but I like that because anytime in history when there's social change, there is often the same kind of subtle nudging of the conversation to guide it away from what it was to what quote unquote they would want it to be. Like in terms of, and that goes across the board with any kind of social change. It could be the civil rights era, as I mentioned here. It could be something later than that. It could be something earlier than that in another century even. Anytime there's like a social upheaval of some kind, there's always people that are trying to nudge it away and kind of
distract you from it.
Yeah, get people kind of onto a different track to where they're going to settle maybe for something less than what they're driving for. So gunslinger sharpness. She not only the gunslinger sharpness, but she's also the most expert in this kind of subtle narrative shift.
She lived through it.
Yeah, she was in the height of it.
She lived.
So whereas again, Eddie and Jake, not as much. Like they would, for them, they live in an era far less defined by social change, so they wouldn't be maybe as privy to that stuff. All the kind of guidance that they're being given through just whatever means would have been far more subtle and far less like dire. Like what would it be like? Shot by this brand, Eddie Dean, by that brand. Like it would have been far less different than like trying to like shift a social thing. So I do appreciate that because I think it just fits her character quite a bit.
It does.
Next up, she understands why he did it, to give Jake time to heal. But that realization aside, her feelings are unchanged. Astonishment, amusement, chagrin about how he had manipulated them. She then remembers Andrew calling Kennedy the last gunslinger, and she had not liked it then, but now she thinks she understands. There was more JFK than Matt Dillon in Roland. Though she thinks Roland likely had a little of JFK's imagination, but romance, dedication, charisma, and guile. And then, of course, she laughs out loud as she's kind of thinking through all this. Roland asks if there's something funny, and she says very, and asks how many languages he speaks, and he says 5, but it used to be 6, but he only remembers the curses in that 6th language. She then calls him a fox, and Jake asks him to say a swear in the 6th language, and he does, and Roland says that they have a lot to talk about. So kind of a lot there.
Yeah.
my note on this is it makes total sense to let Jake heal, and I remember the kind of wondering why it had taken so long to get to this discussion before, because I wanted them to get all their all their cards on the table, to get them all on the same page so we can get some of these puzzle pieces together, because we as readers see it all, but it's kind of frustrating when they don't.
Yeah, when a character doesn't see what you see. It's like, no, you know this. Like, if you would just talk to him, you'll have this problem solved.
Like in River Crossing, there's a few times where, there was some stuff going on there. I'm just like, come on, guys, just get together, talk all this through.
Right here.
So it gave me a good reason, because I was kind of getting frustrated by the fact they hadn't had this conversation yet. So for this section here, for Susanna to realize this is kind of a way to communicate it to me of like why this hasn't happened yet. And it makes total sense, because I definitely would have overlooked that overall, because again, I just want the journey to be going forward and being a lot smoother. So I'm just like, come on, guys, just talk, whatever. So that was annoying to me up until this. Now it's like, oh, okay, I get it. There's a couple of those in this chapter where King kind of slaps me a little bit with my misunderstandings. Next up, this Matt Dillon mentioned is an older guy from Gunsmoke, not the guy that was in the movie Crash or There's Something About Mary, as that younger actor was born the year that Susanna was drawn in 1964. So most of us in our day, when we hear Matt Dillon, we're thinking of one person. It's not him. Yeah. It's a totally different guy. If you Google Matt Dillon Western, you get the guy from Gunsmoke, and you can definitely see he looks like that era of guy.
It's the character's name, right? Matt
Dillon.
No,
I think it's the actor's name.
No, it's Marshall Dillon.
I thought it was I looked it up, and it looked like, I swear it pulled up an IMDb of the guy's thing. So, and then also I absolutely love that not only does Roland only remember the curses from one language, but also Jake wants to hear one. Both of those things are things I relate to at different times of my life. Oh, yeah. Also, what's more important in a language to know than curses?
I was literally typing a note for this, and then I saw that you had outlined it. I'm like, oh, yep. Because every kid wants to know what that swear word is. I remember in elementary school, we had someone move in who spoke fluent Spanish. He was like from like El Salvador or somewhere like that, down in the Central America. And he spoke perfect English, perfect Spanish. And I'm like, what's bitch in Spanish? And he tells me, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I had to know.
Exactly. So I not only do I get it from Jake's perspective, but like I remember in like 6th grade, we had like a little like chunk of time we did Spanish. And literally the only thing I remember from that is the swear words I learned from the other students. I don't remember anything the teacher actually taught us. Yeah. So it just, not only do I relate to Roland, that you forget everything but the swears, but also I relate to Jake because I've been there. So I love that. It made me so happy because I'm just like, both sides, I'm like, I get it. that totally fits. That's 100% me. And I'm sure everybody else has probably
had someone that they've spoken to that speaks a different language, or they've looked up. I mean, there's Google Translate out there for a reason, right?
I wonder if there's like a website that just catalogs like all of the swear words and the different languages and how to say them. Like there has to be.
There's got to be.
Because again, like I said, what's more important than the swear words? Because then you can get a lot of context from that,
That's right.
Because you can kind of hear the tone if you had somebody speaking that language. If you heard a word, you're like, oh, I know what that word means, and you kind of hear the way they're saying it, like they're pissed off right now.
Yeah, I picked that up from a couple different things. I don't know if it was a game or a show, but there's the I think it's bruja, which is witch in Spanish. So every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, I know what they're talking about. I know what's going on.
I understood that word.
I understood that. Agamorphy says in the chat, James Arness played Marshal Matt Dillon in Gunsmoke. So the character's name is Matt Dillon. So I wonder if he was named after him.
Could be.
There you go.
Could be. Yeah, I guess I just Googled it quickly because I was just like, Matt Dillon, that's a young actor. Like, not young nowadays necessarily, but he's more from our era than anything else. So I'm like, why is that reference in there?
Dude, I saw your note with it, and my brain broke, and all I could think about is Matt Damon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is he not referencing the Bourne Ultimatum or the Bourne Identity with this? And then I finally, when I Googled it, I was like, oh,
yeah,
different guy, Damon Dillon, got it.
Yeah, definitely different person. So definitely, yeah. And I'm like Matt Dillon, like I'm not even overly familiar with him. I don't think he's been in as many like iconic things as anyone. I mean, when I mentioned Crash, like the worst Best Picture of all time, and There's Something About Mary, largely forgotten comedy. It was big. It was big at the time. In the late 90s when that came out. But it definitely doesn't have any staying power by any means. So but that's it for subchapter 18.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump on over to 19.
A lot of these are smaller too, so there's just gonna be a little bit here.
Yeah.
Roland explains what Quartet is and how a bunch of them together make a they're bound by destiny and fate and stuff like that. How the three of them are connected more than he is to them because they're from the same world, which I thought was interesting. He's like, you guys share minds, you guys can share thoughts back and forth, like telepathic speak. I kind of think of like Charles Xavier in X-Men, where you can talk back and forth with him because he can read your mind.
Like that first scene with Wolverine.
Right.
When he's in the mansion.
Yeah.
It's like hearing the voices all over the place. He's like, who the hell's talking? Where are you going? And stuff like, Right. But Roland says that he can only send and can't receive because of the difference between him coming from a different world. Eddie's, of course, is like, what the hell are you talking about? That hasn't happened. So, of course, he gives them examples. He told Susanna to let go in the speaking ring. She backs him up and says that he didn't say that out loud. Yeah.
Then he tells Eddie about getting down in the Shardik Slayer when the bat dives at him. Susanna clarifies again, Eddie, he didn't open his mouth when he did that.
Yeah.
And then also telling Jake through the closed door to pry up a different board to get to the key.
Yeah.
When Jake froze.
Which is interesting to hear that was actually Roland. Because remember, I think when we covered that during that,
curious if it was
we kind
Eddie
of thought
or
it was more of the court thing, where it was just like, because like the gunslinger, quote unquote, had been talking in Jake's head for a bit, but kind of in the same way that we've seen Court and Roland's father talk in Roland's head. So we're like, is this just kind of whatever rub off? But this kind of actually clarifies that no, it wasn't that. Roland was actually communicating to him. So pretty interesting.
And then also at the end here, he's there's a joke that Jake just kind of jokingly asks, hey, is Oi part of the quartet? And Susanna does like this maternal, like, oh, that's cute, honey. Yeah, you're cute. But Roland's like, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's a coincidence. It could be a coincidence that we just ran into the smartest Billy Bumbler I've seen in 3 ages.
Yeah.
Or it could not be. So he's kind of like ominous about that, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like literally it says Susanna smiled. Roland didn't. Like, see, I understand they call that specific part out. It's like, Roland takes this shit seriously.
Yeah. See, I was hoping for Roland to go, no, he's just a vermin.
Really did hate Oi at the beginning, didn't you?
God. Or, like, ultimately, Oi's from the same world Roland is, so he shouldn't be part of it then. If Roland's not, then Oi shouldn't be.
Roland explains he's part of it. He's just not as connected to the others.
And that's the way Oi should be. In my mind, I remember thinking that the first time, and every time I read it, it always comes back to my mind where it's like, if Roland is in some kind of lesser role in the quartet, then Oi would have to be as well, because he's from the same world as Roland, right?
Yeah.
Like, joking aside of, just stabbing you with my Oi comments there. But, yeah, ultimately, if Roland's less connected, then so too would Oi. Yeah. Yeah.
I get your point. You're still wrong, but I get your point. I loved the world building here with Roland. Quartet. We also find out about Kef. I kind of just glossed over that, but it says this closeness and sharing of minds is called Kef, a word that means many other things in the original tongue of the old world. Water, birth, and life force are only 3 of them. So he says to just, kind of watch out for that. But then Quartet also as well. And then the sharing thoughts thing, like that's something that we obviously don't have. There's jokes about it here in our world, but there is no telepathic abilities. Like me and you don't share thoughts and everything. So more world building for Roland's world. Also, Roland says that quartets form a picture, but sometimes it takes many quartets together to form the actual picture. Yeah. So I remember the first time I read this, and I'm like, are we gonna get more? Are we done drawing? Are we not done drawing? Because it kind of felt like we were done when we got Jake, but now Roland's saying this kind of opens that door.
And to me, I interpreted that more as like other quartets. Like, so there were maybe other groups at some point that they would run into that would then potentially paint the larger picture. That's how I interpreted it.
Quartet, group, but multiple quartets. So that's where it kind of like,
like at some point they're going to run into another band of people that
are doing something,
are connected, in some way. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I interpreted it, but I don't know.
And then we mentioned this before. We get Roland saying what order they're going to talk in. He says he's going to begin, Eddie's next, and then Susanna, and then Jake. They're all going to take a turn, except for Oi. He's feeling left out. And Roland says, fine. We are quartet, one from many. Let the palaver begin. That's the line that made our intro. We love it.
Another one from the intro.
Yeah.
Yep, indeed. Indeed.
So what do you got in this section?
So I love that there's no consensus in Roland's land about what can break a quartet, or if it can even be broken at all. That feels way more real to me. I feel like if something that's just obviously fiction, or maybe fiction that's lesser written, it would have just been like, here's exactly how things are broken. Whereas to have it be kind of unknown, or there's different schools of thought, makes it feel way more real to me. So kudos to King on that, because it's just one of those things, like, he didn't have to write that. He could have just been like, yeah, treachery or death are the only things that break it.
Yep.
No, but instead he lets that kind of grow a little bit and show that, like, hey, there's different schools of thought, and I kind of lean more towards Court's way of thinking. There is no way to break quartet.
Yeah.
So I just think that's cool. Again, it's kind of world building in maybe a less obvious way, rather than just saying like, oh, this land and here was the capital and this is the kind of people that were there. Instead of that, it's more of just like, yeah, this basic premise. It's almost like there's philosophical differences. So
Yeah.
I don't know, that just makes the world feel way bigger. So and then also I love Eddie being a cynic and not believing that Roland didn't verbally speak to him.
It's Eddie's way.
That's great.
I said, I think I literally put down at one point Eddie being Eddie.
Yeah.
I changed it, but I put that down at first. I was like, yeah, Eddie's being Eddie.
Yeah, indeed.
'Cause that's how he is with Roland throughout so far.
Yeah. Indeed. And Agamorph, he also mentions The Outsiders and My Bodyguard from Matt Dillon. That's true, yeah. I almost put those down, but I actually ended up referring to IMDb, because they always put that top thing where they have like people's most known for. And I find that those are pretty legit. But yeah, The Outsiders The Outsiders is one I was going to put down there. But then I was just like, I'll go with what IMDb says, because just because I know something doesn't necessarily mean it's more well known. So My Bodyguard I'm not familiar with, but The Outsiders I remember watching in grade school.
I still haven't seen it.
No, I can't remember when I read it, but I think it was grade school. If not, it was early junior high. So it's been a long time. All right, so moving over to subchapter 20. Starting off here, they're talking for a long time and stop only to eat a cold meal, which that just sounds depressing.
Not necessarily. Cold meal sandwich.
I don't know.
Gunslinger burrito.
This isn't, where you're getting a cold sandwich from, wherever. This is this other world. I just think a cold meal just doesn't sound like. I think even a warm meal in this world is probably not that great. So
hey, you got to remember, they just came from river crossing. Their tummies are full.
Yeah, I guess. But and then when it's over, Eddie feels like he's gone 12 rounds with a boxing pro, and by the end, he no longer doubts that they have been sharing Kef. Eddie and Jake have been living each other's lives in their dreams, like two halves of one whole. It makes total sense not to rehash this, since we've obviously, as readers, have seen everything that they would have been discussing. The same thing happened when we heard stories shared prior to Jake showing up. I don't remember what it was. I remember they were bringing Susanna into something, and it was just one of those, like, they give you one sentence to say that, then they told the whole story or whatever, because there's no sense in
Roland told her what happened.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no sense in just rehashing it, since we've already heard it as readers. And then, I love that. Just kind of whatever, because even though they just brush over that, you kind of know as a reader that all of it's kind of getting brought together a little bit. It's like you got all the chips on the table, and now you're starting to kind of bring them up into one stack a little bit, and I don't know.
Put the ones with the ones, the fives with the fives, the tens with the tens.
Yeah, exactly. Which can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's go, because in my mind I'm like, let's get on with this. I need to know more about this Dark Tower.
Twirl the fingers a little bit.
And then I definitely relate to the feeling of being physically beaten after a long non-physical event, whether it's movie marathons or whatever. It's definitely certain things you could just feel physically.
Talking about your Avengers movie marathon.
Yeah, that was a long time ago now, but yes, that was a long one.
Was it Age of Ultron?
Yes.
So you watched all of the Marvel movies and then you watched Age of Ultron. What you got there?
Yes, it is. It was, let's see if it says, it was 26 and a half hours.
Good Lord.
And it was everything from the original Iron Man through Age of Ultron. Yes, I was fairly tired by the end of it, and physically just felt beat. Yes.
You really are a psychopath when it comes to stuff like that. I can't believe you did that. And in a theater, like not at home.
Yeah.
You did that in a theater.
Yes. Yeah. And I wasn't a weakling. Some of the people there had like decided like that there was like certain movies that they decided they were going to sleep during, and they like brought sleeping bags and shit and like went out to the hall and slept. I'm like, dude, you fucking cowards. Like that's the whole point of this is to like marathon it.
Sleep in the chair.
Yeah,
No, I'm just kidding.
no, like I was like loaded up with like 5-hour energies and all kinds of stuff. Like by the end, I was almost hallucinating. But yes, I didn't sleep.
You had to rewatch Age of Ultron.
Yeah, well then also they put that one in 3D, which annoyed me. But yeah, movie marathons though. I mean, also like long drives, flying on an airplane. There's just certain things that they're not really physical, but you feel them afterwards. And I don't.
It's one of the things that I've heard where the argument about sports. It's one of the things with NASCAR. It's like, yeah, doing 500 laps, that's physically exerting, and everyone's always like, it's just driving. I'm like, go drive for 5 hours. Tell me how you feel afterwards.
Yeah,
like there is something there.
Go take a road trip and drive 12 hours and see how you feel at the end of it.
Exactly. Like it's a process. It's a thing that your body goes through. I mean, hell, I just drove out to visit my sister 3.5 hours away from where we live, and by the end of the drive out there, I forgot how long of a drive. I didn't look at the map. I'm just like, I know where I'm going. I've been there before. I don't need to look at it. By the end of it, I'm like, God, are we still not there? Like it just felt like, and then when I got there, I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to relax and recharge, basically, which is what Eddie's talking about. They just came through. I mean, even like the stress of walking into river crossing alone, regardless of the meeting, regardless of the guilt when they felt when they left river crossing, just walking into river crossing, that stress of not knowing what's coming.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking like they're thinking life and death here.
Yeah.
That's more so than what me and you feel when we fly.
Yeah, well, I mean,
flying is the safest form of travel, sir. Let's not spread any rumors here. All right?
Every once in a while I read stories and they're way more recent than they should be. Like the last time a window broke and sucked someone out most of the way and, basically killed them, that was in the 2010s.
Let's not talk about this anymore. Thank you. Moving on.
Depressurizing the counters. Yeah, all I'm saying, I know what Superman told me, and I of course buy into it because Superman would never lie. But yes, still, maybe not as much as going into river crossing. But there is always a part of you where you're like, I really hope there's good engineers for this plane.
Yeah. You always want to look out the window and not see duct tape hang on your wing. I've had that happen once. I did not feel comfortable with that flight, but it happened.
Oh man. And then Agamorphy says Stephen King is laying the groundwork for his benefit too. Needed to make rules to keep the story straight. Yeah, and of course, I mean that's always a good thing to do because I think it also makes the stuff jive better. It makes it probably easier to write when you have rules and stuff. But King's definitely doing a lot of good world building and rule making as well.
There's a comic book hero that has that, right? Where like I can't remember if it's Marvel or DC, but when they gave this character to different artists and writers, it's like, okay, I think it's Spider-Man. No killing people.
Oh, it's not even just that. Roadrunner. There was like a whole thing.
Oh, that's what it was.
Roadrunner. There is one for Spider-Man. Like, no, it's not just. It's a lot of our more beloved things.
Roadrunner can never physically hurt the coyote. Everything that happens to the coyote is his own doing.
Yeah,
and stuff like.
Roadrunner can only ever be on the road or something like that too, which is another weird one.
Roadrunner only ever says me meep.
Yeah, that's just weird stuff. But there's stuff for Spider-Man too.
I remember
as well.
Spider-Man. The one I remember with Spider-Man is that Spider-Man can never get high.
Yeah,
can never do drugs
unless he's drugged.
Unless someone does it to him. Yeah, he can never like snort coke or have a joint or anything. No Mary Jane whatsoever for him. Wait. I see what they did there.
No, just cocaine for the writers and artists.
That's
as well.
Right.
Because there are times you read some of those like some comic books and you're just like, dude, what the fuck were these people on when they wrote this stuff? It's like sometimes it's more cut and dry, but sometimes when you get really deep in the weeds in comics, you're like, dude, these guys must have been on LSD, man. Like this is
going on.
This is insane. So next up, Roland starts off with stuff from book 1, namely Under the Mountain stuff, including Jake dying. He tells them about the palaver with the Man in Black and talks of the Beast and someone called the Ageless Stranger. He talks about the visions that he saw at the that ended with a blade of grass that was purple. And Eddie sees recognition in the eyes of Jake, because we obviously know we've seen both of those things. We saw Roland experience in the purple grass in the end of book 1. We also saw it earlier in this book with Jake. Jake when he was at the vacant lot. He saw grass that at first he wrote off as being like spray painted or paint spilled on it or whatever, but then he realized that was all just camouflage and it really was purple. So definitely kind of a connection being made from earlier in this book all the way back to book 1. Which is kind of cool. So I love this too because ultimately it's a good recap of fine details, things like the beast and the ageless stranger, as well as the purple blade of grass, because these are details that are probably important since King's bringing them up again, but it's far too specific that King never would have put these things in like the argument at the beginning, right?
Right.
So calling them out here is the best way to basically get all of us up to speed on this, because also, and the other thing too is when he's doing his argument, does he really know that he's going to get here 60% of the way through this book?
Yeah.
Probably not. So he probably didn't. And again, it's way too detailed to put in the argument. So it's just kind of a cool thing to recap this in a way to where, yeah, Roland's telling it this large story. We're only getting the bits that are important for King to be like, hey, reader, he's poking with us with a stick. Make sure you remember all this.
This is where you have that good teacher in school. It's like, yeah, and so then this happened. And then it gives you that look that, write that down. Write that down. Put that in your notes.
Or even not look. Sometimes the teacher just straight up told you. Like,
oh, yeah, they're straight up. This next 3 things are going to be on the test. This is the day. This is the person. This is what happened.
I remember
that's on the test. Write it down.
I remember one teacher told me, and I think it was a history class, or he told the whole class, is just like, if I write something on the board, write it on your paper. And he just made it a clear-cut rule up front, where he's like, if I write it on the board, it's worth writing down.
Yeah.
So, kind of a fun little thing where I always remember that for some reason, because no other teacher did that. Every other teacher was always kind of like ambiguous. Some like wrote way more shit up there than they needed to, and it was pointless to try to write it all down. Other ones didn't write anything. So
I could always gauge how much I was going to like a teacher, especially like history or English, based off of how much they told us was going to be on the test, like what parts of it. Like after that first test, I'm like, okay, you're a dick. You didn't tell us any of this was going to be on the test. You're a dick.
Yeah.
But then there's other ones that are like, all right, so question number 1 is going to cover this. Question number 2 is going to be about this. And it's like, oh, fuck. Hold on. Hang on. Let me hand out the answer sheets to all you students.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious about, just total tangent here, but do you think there's any like schools that still have chalkboards, or is it all whiteboards now?
They're still. My daughter's school has chalkboards. So
yes. They were phasing out when we were in school, for God's sake. That was a long time ago.
I think there's still a artistic side for chalk, where it's
be damaging for computers and technology to have all that chalk dust around. That's why I just wonder if they wouldn't just phase off. I even remember when I was in grade school at one point. Remember when they have like the little tiny boards with each kid, you'd write answers and stuff. I remember that, and that was at whiteboards when I was in grade school.
Did you have whiteboards like that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We just held up our hands and talked like heathens.
No, I mean, it wasn't super common, but there was, certain classes where, and like I remember there were some that also had chalkboards too, gave us all chalk and stuff. But I do remember toward the later part of elementary.
Went to, like, prep academies or something. I never once had my own individual board. Damn.
It was just like a 1x1.
I still never got my own individual 1x1.
And it was rare. It wasn't like every class. Like I said, I think maybe recall 2 times that ever happening. But yes.
How elitist of you to be like, well, it wasn't that special.
No, it didn't happen. No, I'm just saying it didn't happen all that often. It wasn't like every class we had. Now the kids probably have freaking tablets.
They do. They have computers and everything. Like, they go to computer labs and stuff, and it's like, here's a computer for each child. I'm like, I remember sitting with groups of 3 at a computer, taking turns each writing one sentence.
I remember my school had a computer lab with all Macs. Those ugly, big, fat, colorful ones.
The horrible ones.
Yeah, like those early Macs.
The blue and the green and the red. Purple.
Yeah, exactly. So, tangent aside, though, now moving on to subchapter 21.
So, this one's a little bit lengthy here. Roland starts telling his story. Eddie's heard all of this, parts of it when Roland was delirious, because Roland couldn't keep a straight line. I mean, he's like us, tangents. Susanna and Jake are enthralled because they've never heard it. Real fast, that caught me off guard when I was doing my prep. Susanna hasn't heard any of this?
I think that surprises me every time
because they didn't talk outside of Shardik, like before Shardik.
They did fill her in on some stuff because, like I said, I remember there being a point when they're like, and then they told this bit, like whatever, because I remember King kind of brushing over because it's like, of course, we don't need to read it again. We already heard it. So I feel like we've seen something, but apparently this surprises me every single time I read it because it's one of those things that my mind just doesn't connect with and keep in my head. That apparently this is when Jake hears it all is when Susanna hears all of it for the first time. So that's definitely a shocker for me every time.
After Roland gets done talking about drawing Eddie and Susanna and then what happens with Jack Mort, I'm not calling that a drawing. That really wasn't drawing someone. He has Eddie take over.
It was drawing supplies.
Drawing supplies, yes, that's what it was. Has Eddie tell the story of what happened with Shardik and everything. Jake recognizes the name from the book in their worlds. It's Watership Downs. Eddie is shocked and confused at how that can be, but Roland points out that there are doors between worlds, aren't there? And then, again, Eddie just questions Roland at every turn about why the worlds would be similar, even though he crossed over from one world into Roland's. He can't understand how there can be leakage between the worlds.
I'm with Eddie. I want to know more about this. Ever since book 1, when they were singing Hey Jude and, Sheb's bar, I've been wanting to know what the fuck is going on here. How the hell do they know the Beatles? They're talking about Jesus at other times. I'm like, I need to know more about this.
Yeah.
Because again, also, first time I'm reading this, I'm also trying to figure out, are we in a post-apocalyptic world of ours? Or is this a whole different world with different stars and constellations? Is this? When Eddie questions him, as much as I do kind of get mad at Eddie at times for continually questioning Roland when he shouldn't be, in my opinion, I do want to know answers on this because I'm like, tell me what's going on here. And I don't even know if I really like this explanation either. There's doors. It's like, I don't know. Come on. What do you tell me? The Beatles came through the doors?
Someone with a record player and some records.
I don't know. I just want more. I don't know. That's just me. But yes, I don't know. I'm with Eddie.
Oh,
wow. How does this connection happen?
Wow.
What's going on here?
That's shocking.
Jesus, the Beatles, Citgo, or was it, or no, Texaco, oil station with the guy in the book 1. And there's all this shit that keeps popping up. And I'm just like, I remember the first time reading it, I was going back and forth. I'm like, our world. No, it's not our world. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. I'm like,
Roland uses bullets that are in our bullet Bible,
Shooter's Bible or whatever it is. Yeah. Also, they talk about radiation as well, and so I think even Suzanne and Eddie are like, "Oh yeah, your people blew nuked this world, didn't they?" Which I'm like, "Cool, then that makes sense. It's our world, but it's been nuked." So I just I've just flip flop back and forth, is this our world or is it not? So yes, when Eddie's sitting here questioning Roland, I'm like, if I were in this group right now, I'd be like, yes, Eddie, let's continue on this conversation.
Proceed, sir.
Yes, let's
proceed, good sir.
Keep grilling it, Roland here. We need to figure this out.
So Eddie takes up and tells about the vision he had when Roland threw the jawbone in the fire, that he saw the Field of Roses and the Dark Tower. Eddie ends with how they follow the Shardik's back trail to the Portal of the Bear, and then ended with how they found the Path of the Beam, the compass and everything like that. Susanna takes up and tells how Eddie carved the key and drawing of Jake from their side in the speaking ring. Jake says how they might have been able to help him make sense of what he's feeling, especially with regards to Blaine, because he's tired of thinking about Blaine. I just wanted to point out this specific line from Jake is just, it's heartbreaking and it makes me just want to hug the kid. Maybe you can, Susanna says, maybe we can help you make sense of it. Maybe you can, at least you can help me think about at least you can help me think about the train. I'm tired of trying to make sense of Blaine by myself. And then he says at the end, that's was when I gave up. And man, just that whole paragraph with him talking about tired of thinking about Blaine, tired of this is when he gave up and everything like that. I just want to hug this kid. This poor kid's been through so much. This is just I feel like this is King's his way of reminding us, I've done a lot to shit on this kid.
Yeah.
I put a lot of stuff on his shoulders, and you've watched it all.
Yeah.
Constant reader. You've seen all of this, and it just kind of damn, dude.
Leave Jake alone.
I know. And then...
You monster.
Yeah, and then Roland talks about, is talking with Eddie, and this is back to what we were just talking about, how Eddie doesn't believe Roland and everything like that, and he wants to see further proof. Roland says how Eddie is like Cuthbert, who said he wouldn't believe in ghosts unless he caught one in his teeth. Eddie responds with, "Hey, good for him, bravo." I love the comparison to Cuthbert, but also at the same time, Eddie's still not putting up with Roland shit. He's like, "Hey, good."
Yeah,
that's the way it should be.
Yeah. Now, do you think Roland's a believer, in terms of ghosts and stuff? I feel like Roland would be a little bit Well,
of course he does. I mean, he's dealt with demons.
I'm saying, let's say early on when he and Cuthbert were, like let's book one where get those flashbacks and stuff. Do you think Roland would have been quick to like believe in things like ghosts and stuff? I just feel like where we're seeing him now, he's a believer in a lot of this stuff, but I think that came through experiences. I don't think Roland's nature would have been to believe that stuff.
Okay, now when you're saying Roland and Cuthbert, you're talking like way back with like Hax the Cook area.
Yeah, like we saw those flashbacks of the two together.
I imagine they get taught about it.
Yeah, I
mean, he knows how to handle a demon. I don't know if that's necessarily from experience. I think they might teach him that.
I just mean in terms of the belief, though. I just feel like Roland, like, not necessarily that he's as much of a cynic and logical cynic as like Cuthbert is, but I think Roland would just be one that's just like, it's not important. I don't care about that. Like, I don't know if I believe in it, and it would have just been kind of a whatever until through his journeys getting to this point where we're at now. There was probably experiences that completely converted him on that and stuff. But with what we know of Roland, I don't feel that he would have been one that would have been like, yes, whoever you are telling me that ghosts exist, of course I believe you. I just don't see that being Roland. He just seems too, I don't know, logical. Maybe not. Like, I guess that would be the thing. Logical, not cynical. Like, I feel like, Cuthbert, and it sounds like Eddie is as well, like kind of a cynic towards this stuff. I think Roland's just too logical, and it doesn't matter, so he wouldn't believe in it until shit happened. Then he believed in it because like I saw it type thing. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. Roland doesn't.
I just don't see Roland being one that takes any kind of knowledge that someone's passing on to him, Court, Van Aim, anyone, his father, any of the other previous gunslingers, and just being like, nah, I'm not going to.
Do you think any of those people experience the same stuff he did, or do you think Roland has experienced a lot of shit because he's in a fallen world?
I don't think that this stuff is from the fallen world.
Did he potentially experience more than his father and those people did because of the world he's in is far different? You know what I mean?
I swear there's something in book 1 when he goes down into the basement about how to handle a demon that he was taught. Like, taught how to do it. And I don't think he would have used the word taught if it was something after, the fall. And he learned it just on the road. I think of that as, like, classroom instruction, like, a teacher, kind of moment. That's how I always took it, is like, oh, this is the instructions that they get because this is the shit that they have to deal with as gunslingers. That's the way I always took it, is that they're the ones that have to deal with this shit. It's not the sheriff, it's not the local law and everything like that deals with it. If you got a speaking demon haunting your town, call a fucking gunslinger. That's what they're there for.
Yeah,
that's what I took away from it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I always just saw Roland as, like I said, I wouldn't say cynical like Cuthbert, but I do think I would always saw him as a little bit more logical and stuff, to where I just don't think he would have bought into that stuff until he had to.
But you're thinking logical like in our world.
No,
logical,
just
logical in Roland's world means that stuff exists.
No, logical in general in terms of like if it's something I can't see or I haven't seen before, I don't even know if it exists. And then when it does come, it's like, oh, okay, it does exist. Whereas, like, Cuthbert being more cynical and maybe more dug in about, like, I don't believe in it. Then when Cuthbert would experience something, it would have probably been something that shook him. Whereas Roland, I don't think it would have shook him once he experienced something for the first time. He would have just been like, oh, okay, it is real. Whereas Cuthbert would have been like a kind of a trip where it's oh, fuck, that is actually real. And I've dug in so deeply in my beliefs that it wasn't, that it kind of like, it would affect him. Whereas Roland would be like, oh. And then he just keeps rolling. It's like, okay.
Roland is going to something that he's never seen with his own eyes. He's hunting the Dark Tower. So I don't look at that as like him going, well, it might be out there. I look at him as going, no, I know it's out there. I know it's real. So I don't see him that way.
Yeah, and Alan says, I'd like to think Roland wouldn't put anything out of possibility, but a ghost would be more of an obstacle, not a spooky happenstance. He's too Spock for ghosts. Logic, yes, Tad. I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's anything in the text. Everything we've seen with Roland up to this point, he's so utilitarian that I think some of that just comes with an element of like logic. Like, I don't think that Roland would be one that like, like you can get lost in like we can do it with our tangents and stuff. I feel like Roland would be the one that would always shut those kind of things down because it doesn't fucking matter. Like he'd be like, let's get back on the trail. And he like if Roland was here on the podcast with us, every episode would be like an hour and a half, and it wouldn't go any further because he would just shut anything else down because it's just like it's not important. I just feel like that's, and again, whereas like not, and like there's a stark difference between that and like the cynicism of like Cuthbert, like there's people like that too that are just like so dug in that there is no such thing as like God, or there's no such thing as ghosts, there's no such thing as whatever. They're so dug in on that they're like,
there's no such thing as aliens.
Yeah, exactly. They're so dug in on that. Whereas other people that are a little bit more maybe like agnostic on it, and then there's like true believers. There's like the kind of the three phases. I think Roland's kind of the middle one, and Cuthbert's like the hardcore non-believer. And then there's the other side, which, you know, is more of like the I'm going to believe everything I'm told, kind of the Dale Gribble from King of the Hill type thing. And I just think so. I think Roland's kind of the middle of the ground where it's just like, yeah, I don't know, and who knows? Maybe he was taught some things. I mean, you just read the Little Sisters of Eluria. We see a little bit where Roland's learning some new things. I just wonder if. I don't know. Well, it's ultimately we'll never know unless King writes us more books, because there's a lot of backstory that we just don't have.
I swear there's something in book 1 where they're talking about like when it's in regards to going down into the basement, and maybe I need to read it. I do need to do a read through again. It's been a little bit since I've done the proper Dark Tower, and I swear there's something there where it's like, yeah, I know how to handle this. I was taught how to handle this. You have to remove the jaw. Like, how else would he know that? Like, just experience. He happened to come across the demon and figured it out.
No,
that's a deadly instance kind of thing. You know?
I think he may have been taught it, but it doesn't necessarily mean he was taught by the people of his childhood. He could have been taught by other I mean, you know, kind of maybe he ran into the little short lady from Poltergeist.
They're here.
No, that's the kid. I'm talking that little weird lady.
Hey, they're both short.
They're about the same height, but
this house is clean.
They're all the tangents aside. I do love that, because that does, again, and Eddie's kind of echoing Cuthbert here, of kind of that like hardcore cynicism, like the you know, whatever. And I just think that's cool, because like you don't make Roland this like hardcore like believes everything, but he's kind of that middle ground where it's just like, I don't know, could be. Like, I'm not ruling anything. And at this point now, he's been up and down a lot of roads.
I mean, he does it enough to the quartet. I mean, he literally just did it with Oi being a member of the quartet. You saw Susanna's response.
Yeah.
She smiles like, "Oh, you silly boy."
Yeah.
Roland's like, Could be.
Yeah, exactly. Could be. And I think that's
literally there's an example of that in the last subchapter.
And I think that comes down to like where Roland, he's been up and down so many roads. Like he's been through a lot, seen a lot, done a lot. That I think he's just to the point now where he's just like, I'm not going to disbelieve anything. Like, doesn't mean I'm going to put a lot of like weight into a belief, but if something happens, I'm not surprised by it.
Yeah.
Like there's so and that follows too, because I don't think there's anything we've seen up to this point that has shocked Roland has there. I mean, from a whole town turning on him to doors that went into other worlds and stuff like.
The mutants under the mountain, speaking demons in basements, the demon, the succubus style demon that tried to kill Jake, the demon in the speaking ring, Shardik.
He's taken it all in stride. Like he's just nothing's like rattled him. So that's it.
See, that's where for me, like he's got to know about this stuff, right? Like he's got to have some experience with it, and maybe a lot of it is on the road after the fall and everything.
And that's why
part of me is just like,
that's why I said, like, especially going back to the younger days though, because I do think that the Roland we're seeing now has been through a lot. I just wonder about like what is Roland's core reality, and that's why I said let's go back to when he's a kid, because then he hasn't had all those experiences. Like when he's told for the first time of like, oh, there's this haunted room in the castle, like, you know, Cuthbert like, oh, fuck off, like that's not real. And I think Roland, like, does he believe it? I guess that's what I'm trying to, and then there's no way for us to know. I think it's more of just speculating based on what we know of the character, and I just think that he maybe wouldn't believe right away, but he wouldn't be like as hardcore dug in as like Cuthbert. Like Cuthbert, I would see like, I'm not even gonna go to the room because it's horseshit, and he's not doing that to like skirt going to the room.
Skirt out. He's just like, he's just like worth my time.
He's like, it's absolutely not worth my time. I will not go to that room. That is stupid. You guys are all morons. Whereas Roland, I can see going to the room where it's just like, I don't think there's anything here, but
let's go find out.
Let's see. Yeah, and then whereas like you know,
Alan.
Yeah, Alan would be like, no, absolutely.
I'm not going because there is a ghost in there.
Exactly.
Cuthbert not going, you're stupid, this is dumb. Alan, I'm not going because there is a ghost. Roland's like, oh, let's go find out.
Yeah, let's go see. I don't know. Total tangent, of course, but I love it because it ultimately gets down into the actual reality of who our character is. But I don't know. It's fun. But I do love Eddie and Cuthbert's whole you know,
catch one in the teeth,
and good for him. I like that.
I love that. Good for him. Like acknowledging Cuthbert's sassiness a little bit.
Yeah. And then Alan says Cuthbert would only believe in a ghost if he caught one in his teeth. Logic and necessity versus time and the road to the tower. Which that's exactly a good synopsis of what I've been saying. Is which is interesting because again, that's a perfect build from like King's perspective too, because they're not polar opposites. Mm-mm. They're kind of next to each other in terms of on the spectrum.
Yeah, because you got
the
three.
They're far enough away though that they're gonna freaking
butt heads,
and there's gonna be friction between the two, which is
it's one of those common things where it's like, well, I'm for this. I'm not. Well, then you're for this because that's the opposite of it. It's like, well, no, what if I'm actually against both of these things?
Yeah.
You know? Someone says, hey, do you want chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Neither. So, do you want chocolate ice cream? No. Oh, so you're a vanilla lover? No, I actually hate ice cream. You know, that kind of.
Then you just burn them.
Then you just burn them as a witch.
They're obviously a witch, so.
Some people are lactose intolerant, Tad. Jeez.
Most people are, from what I hear.
Are you serious?
I've heard that like not being lactose intolerant is actually like the mutation, like the genetic mutation. Like,
oh, geez.
Like the standard is being lactose intolerant to some extent. Some people are obviously way more lactose intolerant, and it's like violently ill. Whereas other people, their stomach doesn't feel as great as it did, and they just accept that's normal. And
so what you're saying is that's my mutant power, not being affected by cheese and stuff.
Okay, and then going on, my notes on this section.
Yeah.
So Roland says Eddie is just like Cuthbert and trying to explain things away, and Cuthbert says, I guess I already kind of covered some of this stuff, but I love it because the echoing of Eddie to Cuthbert, because like Roland has said it a couple times in the subchapter where he's like, you're just like him, or he's even thought it, and he hasn't even said it a lot, but just the fact that he's like thinking it is just funny, because it's just like, can you imagine Roland? Because I mean, we've already seen Cuthbert a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't think that like even personality wise they jived a whole lot, because like they're so different. Like, but I don't know, opposites attract. So there is that.
Exactly.
But,
evil, good. We attract. That is a very common thing. Is opposites attract.
But yeah, I don't know. I just love that echoing with Eddie here, because I just feel like from Roland's perspective, he just like, what have I done to deserve this?
Yeah.
You know, Cuthbert's been gone, and now I get one that's just like him down the road. Let's see, and recapping all of these stories, we are being reminded of many of these pieces, and like Roland, we're seeing all the pieces together, and it's giving us readers more of the picture than we had before, which I kind of like, because I feel like, yeah, we're very much like Roland, like, because I think Roland probably knows the most out of everyone, but he's learning a little bit here. I feel like we as readers know mostly everything, so I feel like us and Roland are very closely aligned in this portion, where as this is all being brought together, we're seeing a clearer picture, kind of like Roland is, whereas I think the other ones, the other three are maybe a little bit behind. I don't think they're as caught up yet. They need a little bit of explaining, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Roland, like, he's seen a lot. Cool, give me all your little pieces. I see the full picture. Now let me explain it to you. We as readers, we're with Roland. We're like, things are starting to, and I remember being so excited by this section too, because like, again, I want to know what's like, this is called the Dark Tower series. I want to know about the Dark Tower. So, you know, I'm halfway through the third book now, and I still have no fucking clue. I was starting to irritate me. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, cool, give me some of these pieces, let's put them together. Now let's start explaining this a little bit. Yeah. Let's spell this out here. Let's we got to get to this tower in the next book, most likely, right? That was my thought process. So I'm like, there's 7 books, but we can get to the tower in the 4th book, right?
Yeah. Right? We're going to get there soon, right?
Yeah, we're going to get there soon, and then something else, surely I won't have to wait till the last book. I legitimately remember thinking that, where I'm just like, maybe we can get to it before the last book. And I remember just having that thought process, even though probably in my heart of hearts, I was just like, you're a fool to think that.
Poor
but like,
naive Tad.
But I was just like, we have to know more. Like, you can't make me wait that long.
That's just like King to make us wait.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't even having to wait, years like some people.
Yeah.
But still, the fact of like waiting, for me, waiting was more of the distance of reading. And like, yeah, I was like slightly irritated. Mm-hmm. So suspicion is gone for us now in this section. Susanna is pregnant. She's not entirely sure, but we as readers sure as fuck are, which is a huge bombshell for us hidden in the midst of all this. It's just kind of tucked into Susanna's thing. It says that she told them everything except for, and then it's just like, well, she doesn't really know for sure. There's been no morning sickness, mm-hmm. But like in River Crossing, she was touching her stomach and stuff. So I think we as readers were already highly suspicious. So the fact that now it says that she's missed her period, I think all of us are just like,
uh-oh.
Yeah, we as readers, like, we know how this works.
Yeah.
For some reason in every movie, television, and book, the characters are always too stupid to latch onto it right away. But we as audience members certainly know right away. We're like, that's it. Kind of like in movies, if somebody coughs, they certainly have cancer, right? Nobody coughs except for death.
If someone's hiding a limb in a zombie movie, they've been bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
For once, I just want someone to break the rules. Have the person like, nothing, like pulling the sleeve down, nothing. And then they pull the sleeve up and they just have this really fucking ugly tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, in the midst of everything that's going on, now we have that. And I do remember the fact that she's hiding it bothered me. Because I'm just like, we're putting our cards on the table. Like, it doesn't seem to me that building a team is going to work as well if you're hiding stuff right away.
Not sure.
She
wants to be sure.
You could still bring it up and just be like, hey.
I know.
Like we've seen it.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm 100% on your side. Like, if you're laying your cards on the table, lay all of them.
Yeah,
don't keep that one up your sleeve.
Yeah, because it's like every movie where like some kind of like confrontation happens, and it's like if everyone just stopped and talked, it would solve it.
TV shows, movies, books,
everything. Yeah,
everything.
And
happens.
it's just the
I
most.
Swear, there's series that are based off of characters not talking together.
Yeah,
like the whole premise of it is that okay, we're gonna create a problem. Now, if these characters would just sit down and talk about it, it would be solved in 2 episodes.
I think most chick flicks are that way. Like the whole middle portion of the section where the 2 characters are at odds with each other, it's usually just one 10-minute conversation could have solved the whole thing.
Yeah, just have to have it's just a misunderstanding that they got to talk it out to fix it.
Or like the third character kissed the person unwillingly, and the other person saw it, and they thought it was a willing kiss, and then it just turns into a whole like. It happens so much that it's just cliche. It
aggravates me the most in romantic comedies where it's never explained. Because I'm sorry, one of the first things that would happen if someone kissed me, I've been married for 10 years. If someone kissed me and my wife saw it, one of the first things I'd be like, I did not want to do that. No.
Well, a lot of times the character involved in the kiss doesn't know the other person's there.
No, I know, but the first thing I would do when it was brought up is I did not want to do that. I would make my intentions perfectly clear.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's like the first thing I would say. But anyways,
it's the first rule. But yeah, I was irritated that she's hiding it because I'm just like this isn't going to end well. I just remember thinking that. I'm like, this is not going to be good, man. Don't hide it. Like, and also I know where it came from, right? We saw what just happened, so it's just like there's no illusion in my mind that it's Eddie's child.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, there's only one way this is going. Like, even if she had been pregnant with Eddie's child, the demon spawn, whatever, that she probably got impregnated with, probably would have eaten that embryo, and then she would now have just nothing but a demon child. There was just no fooling myself that this was going to be an innocent, happy thing. Like, no. Yep. It's like, this is bad, and the fact that she's hiding it is not good.
Agamorphy says that every time they read this that they forget that she's pregnant. Every single time. And then Robert Ebert calls that the idiot plot in cinema.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, there's something on YouTube where a guy does like film pitches, and it's basically recapping the movie from the perspective of like a writer pitching it to the studio. And there's like always times where they're like, well, why don't the 2 characters just talk? Well, then we wouldn't have a movie. Oh, okay. And then they just move on from it. It's just like, that's pretty much it.
They just let it go.
And I'm not saying that that's the case here, because I think there's plenty to go on if she was to tell here. But yeah, I just remember being really irritated the first time where I'm just like, come on, man, just say something.
It's always irritating when a character does something like that because you're like, this is never going to end well.
Yeah, it's not going to end well.
That's the thing is like whenever someone does something like this, you're like, name one time where it ended well.
Yeah, like kind of like when you see a kid going towards a storm drain with a clown talking to him. It's like, this isn't going to end well.
This isn't going to end well. I know how this ends. I am not a fan of this. And raise your arm if you can. Oh, wait.
Hashtag Peter's terrible. Look at that. You got one that time.
Yes, I did. I earned it, too.
It's fun, though, isn't it?
A little bit. I mean, no. I feel bad.
All right, so moving over to subchapter 22. Jake talked the son down, which is a fun little turn of phrase there. Yeah. He tells him everything from his final essay through the doorkeeper in the Dutch Hill mansion. Roland looks at Eddie, and Eddie realizes that Roland's eyes are bright with powerful excitement and deep fear. And he is shaken by Roland being afraid.
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, exactly, because I was going to say, like,
right?
And this is my note. This is pretty crazy. We've seen Roland through an awful lot in this story up to this point. And he's been run pretty ragged with some pretty mind-splitting stuff. And have we seen fear from him once? Like when the mind was splitting, we saw like desperation, depression, sadness, like defeatism. But was there ever fear? Like I don't remember. I don't remember fear at all. Like in Tull,
giant bear, the entire town trying to kill him.
The monstrosities, the slow mutants. Yeah, like the man in black in the palaver. Like he's been through a lot.
The entire mob building trying to kill him.
Yeah, and even like looking out the airplane window, like there was like a disorientation and kind of a startle, but I don't think that was actual fear. It was more of just like, what the hell am I seeing?
I think it literally says amazement.
Yeah.
I think it literally says that in Drawing of the Three. But even like when Eddie drops off Odetta and comes back and leaves her the gun,
he knows.
He knows, but he also isn't like, oh my God, you left her the gun. Like, oh, what are we going to do? He's just like, you left her the gun.
Yeah.
so robotic, you know.
Which
so
isn't that more defeating though? Like I feel like if I was in Eddie's position, like his absolute just the way he was just so deadpan and cold with it would have just been like it's kind of like the parents where they're like,
I know exactly what you're gonna say.
The parents that are disappointed in you, they're not mad at you.
I'm not mad, Ted. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, like there's nothing worse than that, and I just feel like that's kind of the vibe that Roland gave Eddie there with the whole leaving the gun with her and stuff.
There's a really cool line in Harry Potter where he's in trouble, and the headmaster, who he's really close with at the time, he's like, it would have been better if he had stormed in rage instead of just sounding so disappointed. And it's like, oh, I felt that. Oh, like you get in trouble with a good teacher that you like, or with a good, you know, aunt and uncle or something, or even your parents. You really don't want to mess things up, but you do, and you're like, man, I'm a piece of shit. And you're just like, I wish they would get mad at me because then I feel better because I've been punished, but they don't.
Just a quick side tangent. I was getting my hair cut yesterday,
okay,
and they had one of the Harry Potters on TV.
Okay.
Is there a Mrs. Carmody-esque character? Because there was some lady on there that I couldn't hear anything, but I was just like, this woman is horrible.
Was she wearing pink?
She was a teacher, and she was arguing with the main character about something, and he was saying someone, because I saw there was some text on the screen, but like it was like the closed captioning wasn't working constantly. It was just like popping in every so often. You know, like one of those like a character says a line, then like 3 minutes later that one line's still on the screen. But I did see one of the lines that stuck on the screen for a while was like, no, he got killed by whatever, and
Voldemort.
Like, and this, I was just like, this lady feels like Mrs. Carmody to me. I don't know why. I think it was like the way her face looked. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad my senses were there then, because I was just like, something about this lady just rubs me the wrong way.
If I had Mrs. Carmody and this character, her name is Umbridge. If I had Mrs. Carmody and Umbridge in a room with a pistol with one gun, I'd shoot Umbridge.
There's no way. Really? Wow. Okay, well, I'll just say credit to filmmakers because they made her up in a way that it struck me with basically hearing nothing. Oh, yeah. Because like I don't care that the kid's arguing with the teacher. Like that's a scene that doesn't mean it's a bad teacher. The kid could be wrong, but there was just something about the way she was conveyed on screen that was just like I don't even have to hear anything. I've never seen an actual Harry Potter movie. I've never read the books, but it was enough there that I was just like I don't like this person. Good on them. They did a good job.
I will tell you right now, the movies don't do it justice. The book is 100 times worse. When I'm talking Umbridge or
Mrs.
Carmody, I'm talking book Umbridge, because I'll tell you right now, that woman is a sadistic fuck. she is horrible.
So you're saying I like the cut of her jib then?
I don't know. How do you feel? You've never actually said how do you feel about Miss Carmody?
I mean, I think she ended the way that she should have.
So
with a bullet in her.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm just saying Umbridge is worse than
I hope
Carmody.
Mrs. Carmody shows up at the local convention at some point. I'd go get her autograph for you, and I know you would love to meet her too, because like
to meet her. She's a fantastic actress.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not one of those people that the people who play characters in TV and movies are those characters. Like if I ever met Joffrey, I'd be like, oh my god, dude, you are like the best. I fucking love you. I hate your character, but I love you.
Yeah, exactly. If she ever did, I would go and I'd get like the mist signed from her for you. And say like, "Hey Peter, expiation," and then sign it.
Is this the part where I tell Tad about Cameo, where he can order them to send me a message? Because I can tell you right now, he probably could, and she'd probably do it in character. Like, that'd be terrible.
Oh, that'd be glorious. All right, so next, tangent aside then, Roland asks Eddie if he still has doubts of the overlap of the worlds, and Eddie says that he does not. And then asks to see Charlie the Choo Choo, but Roland says not yet, and asks to hear the vacant lot again, and tells Jake to remember everything. Jake says maybe Roland should hypnotize him like he did in book 1, and Roland said there is no need. What happened in the vacant lot is the most important thing that happened in Jake's life and in all of their lives, and that he could remember everything.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
All of their lives, including Roland.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. That's shocking, and like it's easy to forget just how, because I think in the moment of when we read like the vacant lot, we understood there was something big going on there. But I think now as time's gone by, it's easy to kind of lose that. So for Roland to say that just brings it all back immediately to how big and grandiose that all felt.
It was.
So that's just a brilliantly written. The way that King wrote that is brilliant because it brings it all back immediately. And like biggest, like the most important thing that ever happened in your life, but all of our lives. Like just to add that second bit of it is just like holy shit. Like that adds a lot of weight to it. Once again, Roland is directing the conversation and thoughts, but no one challenges him on it. So once again, kind of what Susanna
was talking
noticed
about
earlier. He's doing the same thing again. And we don't even get any indication that Susanna notices it this time.
No.
Where, he's stopping him on the Charlie the Choo Choo and like, no, we got to keep talking over here.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
Like what you were talking about with him with the whole ghost thing. It's like, no.
Yeah.
No tangent.
Yeah, exactly. Like Roland's keeping our show to 90 minutes because he would do that if he...
I can't believe Roland's anti-tangent. That just takes him down a peg for me. You know how I feel about tangents.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is and what we're both saying is that Roland is not welcome on our show.
I'd rather have Eddie. At least I can laugh with him.
Yeah. I don't know. You can't trust a junkie, sir. Oh, surprised I didn't get any kind of hash or even just any kind of reaction from there. All right, and then the next note I have is a great way for King to further highlight the importance of the vacant lot. Just the way that Jake felt in the moment was probably enough to communicate to us as readers just how big that was. But now for Roland to say this reminds us all of just how big it is in this moment. Because again, I think I kind of had forgotten just how big that scene was for Jake, because the after the Dutch Hill Mansion happens, I think that's such a big thing. It's easy to kind of overshadow and kind of forget exactly how that whole vacant lot scene played out, because the Dutch Hill Mansion was so big, and then now he's on our side, and we see we're talking to River Crossing. It's just easy to lose track of it all. So good on King to bring that up there.
Yeah,
the way he does. And then next up, Jake goes through it all again and says, and it says that they all see that his experience in the lot, or let's see, Jake goes through it all again and says that they all see that his experience in the vacant lot was at the secret at the heart of their quartet, and that they share. So that's interesting, because through his telling, they're kind of seeing the importance of the vacant lot for the quartet, which is another thing to perk our interest as readers, because it's like, wait a minute, this whole quartet nonsense is all new to us. So we're trying to learn as much as we can, and then for that line to be thrown in there, it's like, wait, at the center of the quartet is this vacant lot? Like, that gets my antennae up. I'm just like, wait, what? Let's focus in on what he's saying here.
Yeah,
that's kind of a big statement to be making there.
And it gives like specific examples too, talking about like how the vacant lot filled with broken bricks and shattered glass is another version of what Susanna knew as the drawers.
Yeah.
So that one, and then Eddie sees the artistic deli is still standing. Jake sees it as torn down. Again, that doesn't matter, but they see there's parallels here between the three of them.
Yeah, and exactly. The connection is in Eddie's dream, the artistic deli's there. Jake, it's gone. And then Roland thinks the vacant lot is a version of Susanna's drawers and the place that he had seen at the end of the vision with the
place of bones
in the Golgotha. So, kind of an interesting
tying all four of them actually.
Exactly, and just two, honestly, up to this point. Like Jake and Eddie have been sharing a lot, but then to now pull Susanna into it, and then to pull Roland into it, it's just like, okay, something. This is like Inception. There's layers going on here.
Yeah.
So definitely kind of a cool thing there. Then my note here says we still don't have a full idea of exactly what the quartet is. So to say that it's a part of it is interesting to see, because I still don't know how much I understand of it at this point when I'm reading it. Because Roland's explained a little bit, but it still feels like a much bigger thing than what he's actually told us yet. It feels like there's more to it that we're gonna probably find as we go. Any little hint I'm kind of latching on to. So and then I love that it's tying our whole team together with like we just mentioned there, with the stacking of all four of them having some version that in some way is connected to that vacant lot. Is like, okay, so yes, there is something very important here. Add that to what Roland just said, that it's the most important thing in all of their lives. Yeah, something's big here. Suddenly I'm just like, okay, let's go back to that vacant lot now. Shall we?
Can we?
Because that, suddenly I didn't think much of it when I was there with Jake. So there's a lot going on. It was really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff. Eddie dreamed about it. And then his dream led him to the Dark Tower in his dream. So yes, there was some titillating stuff, but I don't think there was any part of me that was like, cool, I can't wait to go back to the vacant lot. And I hope we do at some point or anything like that. I had none of that thought. But after this, I'm like, we better get back to the vacant lot at some point, because this is Stephen King has suddenly made this way more interesting than it was before. So and then next up, Jake is telling the story again, this time slower, and Roland is right, because he can remember everything. His memory has become so good that it's almost seems as though he is reliving it, which is interesting. Have you ever had that, where like something is so clear in your memory that it's almost like you're reliving it? It hasn't happened to me a lot, but it's happened to me a couple times where like,
Not really.
Just exactly. Like for me, it's like exactly like that, like reliving it. Like usually though, it's more of like an emotional thing, like telling a story and then like the emotions of it all come back, and it's like reliving it. But like a lot of times though, with that, the emotion just carries me, and I'm you know what I mean, and like mentally it's like I don't know, I've definitely had that. And the other one is like odor, fragrances, smell. Sometimes that pulls you in, like you'll smell something, you know, like smell like the perfume that your first girlfriend wore, and you know, you smell it again like in your 30s, you're like, whoa. Like that is fucking weird. So, and then it's, so it seems like he's reliving it. He mentions the Turtle Bay condominiums and the poem. And then this is, verbatim here. See the turtle of enormous girth. On his shell he holds the earth. If you want to run and play, come along the beam today. And then after that, Susanna says, his thought is slow, but always kind. He holds us all within his mind, and then asks, is that right, Roland? And then Jake's curious about it, obviously, and Roland says that it's a poem from when he was a child. He says it's another connection, but not anything that they need. But you never know when something will come back in handy. So again, Roland just kind of cutting those tangent.
Nope. Let's not go down that road.
That's what he does. He's a pruner.
He is.
You know, the story's going, and just like our podcast, and the little tangents happen, he just fucking cuts them off before they go anywhere. It's like, It's like, yeah, come on, Roland. Like, I don't agree with you on this here.
It's still crazy that we saw that randomly at a pizza place here in Utah.
Yeah,
they had a picture of a turtle, because it's one of those places that does like brick and then lets you color on the brick, and it becomes like it becomes a part of the restaurant. You know,
so that'd be a good Dark Tower tattoo.
The
turtle with the
turtle with the poem.
That would be a really cool.
That's a good one.
Because and I'm not against it. Anyone that has it, and I know you want it, but like the Ka symbol, totally cool. Like I'm totally, but it is one that is pretty common.
Yeah.
Which isn't that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But turtle with the turtle poem, I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of those. So
I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a single one. But then again, I don't go looking for Dark Tower tattoos. You know.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people share their tattoos with us. That was years ago, though.
We should do it again.
Yeah, we should at some point. Throw a challenge out there for people to send them in to us if they're willing to let us share them.
Me and you go get a Dark Tower tattoo at the same time?
Yeah, what would we do, though?
I don't know. Not matching or anything like that. You just get a Dark Tower, I get a Dark Tower. I know what I would get.
Yeah, Ka symbol?
No, I think I'd change it.
Yeah?
Hashtag tat is terrible.
That's not Dark Tower.
Sure it is.
No.
Put this logo
I'll get an artist rendition of...
Don't you dare say it.
What?
Don't you dare say an artist rendition of Oi speared on a tree branch.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they never know something that'll come in handy. I think that's interesting again because that goes back to our Roland conversation earlier. Is it Roland's like brush it off now, but he's not completely dismissing it that it won't
file
be
it away for later.
that it won't be of use later.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of goes into my point what I was making earlier is like Roland's kind of he's not like because like I feel like if he was just 100% like believer, I think he would have like let that, you know,
I need to know more.
Let's dive into that. Like, and that's kind of my style, right? Like I'm just like, let's hear more about that.
Yeah.
But Roland's just like, no, and I'm like, God damn it, you know,
son of a bitch.
But Roland, he does file it away. He's not going to forget, and if it comes back, it comes back.
Yeah.
Whatever. So, but yeah, turtle tattoo. I think that'd be cool. You know what I should do is I should get a Ninja Turtle tattoo and then have the turtle poem underneath it. Merge it all together, dude. That would actually
at one level of the tower that has to exist, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one turtle that I expect to kick Pennywise's ass, it'd be Raphael.
Why not the best turtle, Leonardo? Raphael's a punk.
He's a clown.
Raphael gets his ass kicked more than anyone.
That's maybe what I'm going to do now. That's a perfect merging of two of my loves there, Dark Tower and Ninja Turtles. So maybe that's all I'll do or just do a turtle, but it's in ooze. It's just a normal turtle, but it's in ooze, and have
the poem underneath
it.
And then instead of it saying ooze on the bottle, have it say North Central Positronics.
No, North Central Positronics and then ooze.
Ooze. Yeah, there you go.
Oh man. So then my note is here for this section. This is that's some kind of memory for Jake to get the point of reliving it. Also now connecting the stuff that we kind of noticed when we were there with Jake, and because he didn't really understand all that stuff, but we did because we're readers and we've already seen some of the stuff with Roland. So there were some of the references that we got that he didn't get. So now that it's being spelled out there, now the rest of Kautek can make those connections that we already made. Where
we know a turtle is one of the is it one of the Guardians, or he talks about the turtle?
Yeah, one of the Guardians.
Yeah.
So I love that. And just again being able to refresh us all, but at the same time making connections that Jake couldn't make. And we were sitting there going, as readers, going, Jake, pay attention to that. That's important.
Yeah.
Of course, there's no way for him to know that. Roland says we don't need to know, but you never. But you never know is a perfect way for King to kind of make us pay attention and put a pin in it till later. King's just like, oh, this isn't important, but it may be later. And that's just a sly way for King to just like, hey, reader, file that away.
Pay attention.
Feel like your teacher analogy earlier. That feels like King doing that to us a little bit.
That's
there.
King writing on the board and turning around and going, better write that
Tapping
down.
it.
Write that down. Write it down.
I had a teacher do that too, where it wasn't the same teacher that told everything I write, but it was a teacher who was just writing stuff. And there was one time that he just like started tapping the thing that he just wrote, and he tapped like probably 25 times before everyone like fully grasped. Because at first you're just like, what the fuck is he doing?
Yeah.
Then after a bit you're like, oh, I see. You start writing. Yeah. And then I think once he saw everyone was writing, that's when he finally stopped. But it was just like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, he
why couldn't you just say it? Just say it. I don't know why.
I don't know. I don't get it. Or just, what about teachers too that, make you take all those notes and then they won't let you use the notes in the class? That's
I never.
All right. So then the last section of this subchapter here, this subchapter, Eddie brings up that there are 12 portals connected with six beams. Yeah. And they started at the bear, and if they go all the way to the other side, it would probably be the portal of the turtle. Roland says that that probably would. Jake repeats the portal of the turtle and tells us about the choir of voices that he heard and the faces and the stories everywhere, and then it was like the core of all existence, which that's a very interesting thing for Jake to... Yeah.
All of this on an 11-year-old kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
He then tells them that about the key in the rose, and then in his full recall he begins to weep, but doesn't seem to be aware of it, which that's something else. Yeah. There to recall to make him start weeping. Then he says
not being aware of it. I mean, that's something I've never experienced.
Yeah.
Crying without realizing I'm crying.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He says when the rose opened, he says it's the brightest yellow he'd ever seen in his life and realized that it was a sun. And then Roland says no, that it was all suns. It was everything real. Jake agrees and says that it was right, but also wrong. Like there were two heartbeats, one inside of the other, and one was diseased or infected. And then he says that he fainted. So kind of a recap of the whole vacant lot there. So a good guess by Eddie about the connection with the bear and the turtle, but I love that Roland agrees but doesn't know for sure, because I feel like it may have been something that he may not, I feel like it may have been something he may have known for sure. Like as a kid, maybe they all drew it out, and that he kind of,
turtle.
Yeah, exactly. That like, it's just like, I feel like there's those certain things that all of us as kids like did. And I just wondered if in their universe that may have been one of those things, like it's a little child's thing, but maybe every child knew like how to draw it out, which ones are across from which ones or whatever, but it isn't. So he's just like, might
just
be
like all of us learned long division.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas it isn't that surety. It's just like, no, it might be, but it isn't like a certainty where it's like, yes, absolutely. The bear and the turtle are related, and this and like,
yeah,
it's just like it's some kind of like.
Also, it could be one of those ones where he's trying to keep him from getting onto a tangent.
Yeah, it could be. Damn, Roland.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely could be.
It could be. Yeah, absolutely, it could be. Yeah, definitely. Yes, I know it is, but I don't want them to know that because then they're going to talk about it.
But it doesn't also matter either, right? Because we're never going to get to that other side.
Shouldn't.
Because the midway point's the tower. So like,
true. Like
ultimately that is
again back to Roland. That's not
important. Yeah, that's way past our goal.
That's not where we're worried about.
We don't have to worry about that. All we have to worry about is the tower.
We're not worrying about what we're having for dinner. Let's just finish the race.
Yeah.
Let's get to the finish line. Let's not worry about dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Then
Roland's that kind of guy. I hate that. I want to know where I'm eating.
A good recap of the absolute exaltation of the vacant lot and the rose, and a bit of understanding from Roland. It's not just a son, but all sons, but also the duality of the lot, both right and somehow equally wrong. Really cool stuff. I just love the way that's written, because it's just, it doesn't seem like that should be possible to be a thing, but it is. So it's just, I don't know. I love it. It just feels like perfect Dark Tower to me. Like, it just feels, for everything we've seen so far, it just feels perfect.
Yep.
So, and also because ultimately, if it was just all things right and there wasn't any kind of wrong, like, wouldn't that just be less interesting? Like,
where's
if it was
the risk?
Yeah,
where's the story?
Yeah,
where's
exactly.
The danger?
Exactly. So I just love it. I think it's perfectly written by King and stuff. So, well done, Cy King.
Oh, as always, right?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
In subchapter 23, Jake starts off by telling them the Blade of Grass wasn't painted purple. I think it's Susanna that brings that up, is that it might have just, appeared that way because it was painted purple. He's like, no, it actually was purple, but the appearing to be painted was actually camouflage. That's kind of like its way of fooling people.
Yeah.
Jake has Jake show them Charlie and the Choo Choo and has him read it. Thank God he doesn't go through the whole thing, because that's a terrible story.
That's a great story.
No.
Good for all children.
No. Jake hands it around first, and they all look at it. Eddie stares at the cover and realizes that he had it as a kid. Also, he didn't like the cover and doesn't trust Charlie. Okay. 2, now don't trust Charlie. Susanna says she also had it too. Couldn't forget about the little girl who shares her name, and that she didn't trust it either. And the smile looks like a great big fake. So, sorry, Tad. 3 strikes, you're out. Both Susanna and Eddie lost their copies. Susanna lost hers when Jack threw the brick on her. Eddie lost his in a move. Eddie says how the end seems like the kids are screaming, not laughing. And then it literally just says Jake reads the story.
Yeah.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is their copy?
I don't know.
It's gotta be, right?
I don't know.
It's gotta be. Like, it went from Susanna to Jake, and then it ends up with Eddie, and that's where
she would have been coming up to New York, so it's that would have brought it into New York. But then it would have had to go. No, it couldn't. No, because it would have went to Jake, which takes it out of the world then, and brings it here. So it wouldn't have been there for Eddie in the 80s.
I don't know. I like the idea that it's all of theirs.
It wouldn't have been all. It couldn't have been Eddie's. Eddie's is his timeline doesn't work out. But
that's if you're thinking of timeline in a linear fashion.
Oh, get out of here with that nonsense! It could very well be the one that Susanna had and the one that Jake found in the bookstores. But yeah, Eddie, it wouldn't have made sense which is the other thing that always trips me out too. Because I always want to put Jake at the latest date because he's the youngest. And just because it makes logical sense that the youngest would actually be the youngest in the timeline, but he's not. Yeah. Eddie's actually the youngest, and Eddie's younger than Jake is in the actual scheme of things. And that always throws me off, dude. I always want to put Eddie in the 70s and Jake in the 80s, and it just isn't right. So
Eddie's older than Jake. He's in his 20s. Jake's 11.
Let's look at their birth dates.
Yeah, but what does birthday matters in a world where the world has moved on?
No, I'm just saying in terms of in the world. Jake would have been older than Eddie. Of course, now where we're at, where it's all thrown out of place. Yes, of course, Eddie's older. But I'm just saying that by technicality, Jake's older. So I always want to put Jake's, because he is the kid, and when they're all together here, I always want to put him at the tail end of the caboose and say, "Oh, he was in '87," but it's like, no, he wasn't. He was in '77. So
it messes with your mind a little bit.
It does, yeah, it does. But yeah, I mean, could be that the one that Susanna had ended up at a used bookstore, a decade or so. I mean, easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, easily could be the one that they're holding there is the one that Susanna brought with her on that train.
Yep.
Up from the south. And
talks about if the train starts doing anything funny, she's just going to start ripping out the pages. That's how distrustful she was of that damn train.
That's perfectly childish, isn't it?
So perfectly logical.
Because how would that affect if that was Charlie? Like, what would harming the book do? But in the mind of a child, that's exactly exactly.
And that's where there's been countless stories where it's that belief is what causes things to happen. I'm going to save my last note here. I know I usually go first, but I'm going to let you do your 2 notes, and then I'm going to read my last note.
Okay, so I wanted to point out that that's crazy, even for a kid's book, to be so prevalent from the 1950s to the 1970s, touching children's minds across all those years. Some stories certainly do, but not a lot of specific books like this. Seems like there's usually new publications, new printings, new takes on things, but like cool. Like maybe you had like, what were those ones, the Golden Spines and stuff that we had when we were kids? Had like all the like the fairy tales and stuff, but they had like the gold.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Really? Those are like, I've never talked to anyone my age that didn't know what those were. Like, I feel like everyone had those, but it's one of those things like, cool, we had them when we were younger, and maybe if you're like your mom still had it, you maybe grab it and give it to your kid, but like, there's no way that that's then going to end up like a couple, like another, like a kid that's born today would end up finding that same book. It just, there would be a new version of it printed and stuff. So the fact that this book is prevalent from basically, because Susanna would have been young, so it would have been probably the 40s or 50s, all the way through the 70s when Eddie is a young kid, because he had it when he was young and they moved when he was young and he lost it. Mm-hmm. So that would have put it in the 70s probably, because he's what, 20 something when he gets pulled.
He's 23,
and he gets pulled in 87. So yeah, rewind it back to when he would have been a kid. It probably would have been in the 70s. So that's just crazy to have that kind of.
There are some staying power with books. I mean, sir.
Yeah, there we go. Agamorphy, the golden books, classics. Yeah, like Google the.
Let me Google it just to make sure that I'm not pulling a Peter here.
Because they're like thin, they're just like little storybooks, like Charlie the Choo Choo would be, but they all had golden like spines.
Dude, I have never seen these books in my life.
Really? Yeah, you're the first person that's in my age range that didn't have
little
at least some of those
books.
Yeah, definitely. I had like, not only did I have those as a kid, but both of my grandparents had them. Like
the Pokey Little Puppy, the Fuzzy Duckling, classic characters, Sharks, Scuffy the Tugboat. I've never heard of any of these. What is this?
It's a pretty huge touchstone for a lot of people. I
read the normal children's books, Green Eggs and Ham, and all the other Dr. Seuss stuff, Cat in the Hat and stuff like that. And
I mean, there's those too. Yeah,
Where the Wild Things Are. And
yeah, but that's usually
the hairy caterpillar.
That's usually a little bit older though. These were like for young, like when you're a lot younger.
Man,
than like, yeah.
See, maybe I just don't remember them.
Not only is Agamorphy surprised at you, Peter, but he also gave an emoji for you there. So that's.
I'm sorry.
No, I do appreciate the emoji though. Gotta love the emojis, and I appreciate all the emojis. Alan dropped one earlier, and then Agamorphy did it earlier as well with the Robert Ebert comment. Oh, and Carol Ann was Alan's comment there. Carol Ann with that, that little lady, creepy little lady, and then so yeah, it's just definitely it would be unique, especially for something not because like even like Green Eggs and Ham. There's been so many different like printings of that like. You know, I don't know, like then they'd have different covers at times, different designs. Sometimes they'll like change the shapes of the books and stuff. But the fact that they all had this exact like, you know, kind of obscure thing is like, that says a lot. There should be hundreds of thousands of children that were experiencing Charlie here. I bet you if we calculated all those, they wouldn't all distrust Charlie like these guys do.
All of them. Every single one of them.
No, Charlie's a happy train.
No.
And then fucking Eddie. And then I got a quote here. See the turtle, ain't he keen? All the things serve the fucking beam. So gotta love that. I had to highlight that because that's a great line, and that is just absolutely Eddie. You know, I always love that when you could read a line, and if I hadn't said who said it, you could tell me who it was.
Yeah.
So
my note that I wanted to say to man, I really don't trust trains.
No.
I don't trust trains at all.
Why? Trains are fun.
Charlie's evil.
Nah.
Blaine's a pain. Nope. No, thank you.
Oh man, I think we should have more trains in the world.
No.
And I don't know. I love them. I think they're fun. I don't know. There's that one here up in like Heber Valley.
Mm-hmm. Heber Creeper.
Go take, which that just sounds creepy. But
I've ridden it.
So have I when I was a young one. But yeah, so you gotta love trains. They're fun.
I took a look at it the other day. We were up in that area driving to my sister's, and I was like, should I take my kid on this? And I went, no, it's a train. Don't trust him.
All right. So let's move on over to subchapter 24. We've got Jake finishing up reading the book, and Eddie says that it's not a perfect fit, but fits well enough to scare him silly. They are in Midworld, which is Charlie's territory, but here he is named Blaine the Mono. Then Roland asks Jake if they should go around the city to avoid the train, and Jake says that he wants to, but he doesn't think that they are supposed to. Roland says that if it is Ka, even if they try to go around, they would find themselves forced back by circumstance. And then asks Eddie what he thinks. Eddie thinks it through, but says he wants to stand in the Field of Roses and see the Dark Tower. and says even if the train takes them through hell itself, if it goes to the tower, it's worth it. Which that's
Jeez, that's an image.
That's something to say, yeah. And then Susanna hardly answers. In fact, I would almost say she doesn't answer when she's asked, and only says that she feels drawn. And even then, she doesn't even really say that as strongly as I worded that there. She just says, like, she just basically says, I can recognize when someone's knocking me on the head saying this way, stupid, which is like, again, not really an answer. So Roland says that it's time to hang it up for the night, and Jake asks about the riddle book, and Roland says that there will be time for that tomorrow. Once again,
shutting down the tension.
Yep, Roland will not. Roland is good at controlling this stuff.
Roland's really good at closing doors.
Yeah, indeed. That's a perfect way to say it, because he does. He shuts stuff down. Mm-hmm. And like my notes here, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be Jake in that moment, to have the leader of your group, the only man from this world, asking a child's opinion about what to do. Because just asking him first, like, as a kid, I would interpret that. I don't know that he's going to go ask the other two. It sounds like you're putting all this on me, an 11-year-old kid. Like, I don't know. That has to be a trip, even if King doesn't say it, because not often as kids are we genuinely asked our opinions on things that are in any kind of weighty manner, at least in a real way, right? Like, there's a lot of times that parents will give kids the illusion of choice, but how often are kids actually given any kind of real choice in anything that's meaningful?
Did you ever do birthday dinners with your family?
Where it's like,
all right, Ted, we're going to go out for your birthday. Pick where we go.
Yeah.
Did you remember the weight that was on you? Like, man, I gotta pick somewhere good.
Yeah, but that never felt as bad to me. I'm just
never felt like a world defining decision, but still, the little bit of pressure that we're talking about there with picking a restaurant or a fast food place or wherever.
Yeah. Imagine
that, where it's, hey, do you think we should go to the city where we might die?
Yeah. Like, imagine if, like, you're going on a vacation and it's like there may be a more dangerous route and not another, and you turn to your 11-year-old kid and say, okay, Timmy, which way are we going? And, like, legitimately it's the kid's choice.
It's like in Beauty and the Beast, where he comes to it and he's like, bright and sunny path, dark and evil force. It's like, all right, Timmy, which way are we going? And the kid's going to be like, sun.
but then to put it on the kid, it just I don't know.
That's a big thing.
That just, like, I feel like I can't even think of any time that it was put on me anything that was actually weighty, and I don't mean like life and death, but just like anything that was truly meaningful. Feel like anytime a parent would have actually given you a choice of something that seemed meaningful, they had rigged it in some way.
Oh yeah,
they knew exactly what you were going to say, right? It's
as a parent, I do it.
It's like, it's exactly. It's like, oh, do you want to go to Disneyland or do you want to go to like North Carolina? It's like, you know full well what your kid's going to say. Yeah. So, and no offense to anyone from North Carolina. It's just, if you ask an 8-year-old, where they want to go, like, what the fuck are they going to say? Of course they're going to say Disneyland.
Yep.
So, and so again, it's those things you do. You just manipulate your kid. You know full well what they're going to say. Mm-hmm. So you just, then they think that they've made some kind of decision. Or sorry, there's like a little fly, and
Tad's not having seizures. There is a little fly flying around the office right now, so that was him trying to catch it.
But no, I just feel like parents do that though, where they make their kids believe they've made some kind of choice, but they really haven't made. Like, I've thought of those, and there have been times where, like, I've remembered something, and I'm like, wait a minute, my parents fucking manipulated me. Like, there was no real choice there. So I'm sure you've had the same thing, and I'm sure you do it now because you have a kid.
I full on admit it. I do it to my kid. There's times where I'm like, hey, you want to do this or do you want to do this?
Yeah, it's like, do you want ice cream or do you want carrots?
And it's ice cream because I'm craving ice cream at that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then a new nugget about Ka here. So Ka has a force to it. So if you try to push against it, you will find your way back into its wake. Kind of reminds me of the classic trope of storytelling where someone goes to great lengths to avoid a prophecy or vision, and only in their massive attempts do they find themselves working their way back into it.
Or being like the cause of it too. That's
exactly. So like familiar would probably like Oedipus. So you're talking like ancient storytelling here, where whether it's he or his father trying to avoid him screwing his mom, sends the kid away to be killed. The kid doesn't get killed. He ends up becoming king in another kingdom, conquers the kingdom that he was born into, kills his father, and then marries and screws his mother, not knowing it's his mother. Like, if they would have just kept the kid, they could have probably avoided it. Or Anakin Skywalker trying to stop his wife from dying. The list is a mile long. All forms of storytelling, whether it's books, whether it's movies, whether it's TV, it happens all the fucking time. It's one of the most gone to like tropes in storytelling is someone that goes out of their fucking way to try to stop something from happening. And when you actually roll back the tape, you're like, if they would have just rolled with what they were doing before, none of this would have happened. It was self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the right word for it.
It's literally the plot of the Disney Hercules movie.
Yeah.
Literally the plot of it is like Hades wants to take over, but Hercules can't fight. He's like, great, I'm going to take him out of the picture. Instead makes him the best hero of all time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like...
Hades seems like a good man. Maybe not as good as Ares, but...
No.
Ares is always my favorite.
No.
Yeah, was he in that cartoon? I've never seen that cartoon.
Once. He didn't even have a line.
That's unfortunate. I love Ares. He's one of my favorites. So then going on here, Eddie shows...
How the hell did you never see Hercules?
It came out too late.
No, we were in junior high when that came out.
Yeah, exactly. That's far too late.
You can't watch a Disney movie in junior high. What's wrong with you?
No, like Lion King's about Lion King or Toy Story is pretty much the end of it for me.
They came out like a year or two apart. Like,
I don't know about that.
Wow, sir, you were deprived.
Nah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't see Mulan?
Yeah, Mulan.
I didn't see. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of the Disney ones I didn't see.
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Maybe I've seen that one once, maybe because that was earlier.
No, that's after.
No, I thought that was earlier.
That's around the same time.
You should look that up. I think that was earlier because I feel like I had that when I was younger on VHS at my one grandma's house. But yeah, no, Hercules.
Yeah, Hercules was on VHS as well.
Well, yeah, but if it would have come later though. Yeah, so I just love that. Good little thing to bring up for Ka there that it does have force. The other thing that I wouldn't have known the first time I read it, but one thing that it reminds me of is the past in 11/22/63. The past being obdurate, and it fights back. Like it just kind of sounds like Ka a little bit.
That's true.
Not that I would have known that the first time I read it, but now as a constant reader, it's something that reminds me of going through this here and kind of seeing that new wrinkle for Ka. That's a big one too. You know, to have that like self-fulfilling prophecy thing going, that's a powerful thing. And the next, Eddie shows that he is as much of a tower junkie as Roland is. If saying that one would risk going on a train, which is scary enough to all of them right now, but then to add that even if it goes through hell, he's willing to do it so long as it goes to the tower. It pretty much shows where his heart is. You know, I don't know. It just junkie be a junkie type thing, right? And he's just changed what he's a junkie for, and now he's with Roland and whatever. And also, I noted equally interesting to see that Susanna doesn't really share this desire.
Yeah,
you know, she didn't like just the way she answers, the way she doesn't answer with this whole question is very telling to me. Or like Eddie's just like, dude, if it goes to the tower, I'll go through hell. You know, Jake, he asks, but Jake, it's more about like the danger. It's more like, hey, should we avoid this? And Jake's just like, whatever. But with Susanna, she just doesn't answer. I find that really fascinating.
Agamorphy says Roland remembers that Jake has a sense that he himself doesn't understand. He trusts that it's Ka.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is this isn't the first time that we've talked about going around the city. It was the river crossing folks asked them that. Can you go around?
Yeah.
And Roland said, no, that's a bad habit to get into.
Mm-hmm.
So, now though that more information is being revealed, Roland's actually considering going around, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So some of this information here is enough for Mr. Roland that isn't really scared of a whole lot to consider going around.
But we did see Roland express fear for the first time in the series.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Also, just as Roland guides the conversation, he's also expert at shutting them down. Even when I'm sure they would all like to keep going. I'm sure all of them would have kept going a few more hours to go through the riddle book, go through more of the stories. But Roland just shuts it all down. So he's an expert at that. Like you said, he's good at slamming those doors shut.
Well, it's interesting that he does this because I thought the whole point was to get the cards out on the table and discuss it. Literally, you ask one question and then done.
As a reader, did you interpret that the riddle book was that important though? Like Charlie the Choo Choo? I felt like even as a first time reader, I remember thinking that Charlie felt way more important than the riddle book. And also, it's a riddle book.
Yeah.
Like there's not going to be that much in a riddle book that's going to reveal stuff about your story, right? Because it's not a narrative thing. Like it may as well be a dictionary for God's sake. Like except that it has riddles instead.
And it doesn't even have the answers to the riddles.
Yeah, exactly. It's like imagine a dictionary where all the words are up front and all the definitions are the back, and the back was ripped out. Like,
what's the
cool.
point?
Like maybe this will come into use. It just never felt as
I might be able to figure out some of them, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it didn't feel as important to the narrative to me as Charlie did. So like honestly, I wasn't really that upset when Roland shut it down because I'm like, I don't care. It's a fucking riddle book.
Yeah.
Like
I thought it was interesting that he shut it down and there was no further discussion. I thought we were.
Thought somebody might push back on him even.
Well, even that, but furthermore, I was just kind of disappointed in Roland because I'm like, didn't you say we're like opening and like all chips on the table.
Yeah.
It feels like we've put all our chips on the table, and then you're like, all right, that's nice. Let's leave those there. I'm going to keep mine over here. Doesn't even like put all his on the table because he knows more.
Yeah.
So we got our last subchapter, 25, right? This is the last one?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
This is the end of the chapter.
End of the chapter. All
Indeed.
right. We're going to start chapter 5 next time. So Roland lays awake a long time, and then when the drums begins, he goes back to the road to listen to him. As he turns to go back, he sees a shape looking at him and almost draws but doesn't. But it was close, though, is what it says. It is Eddie, and he's wondering if Roland couldn't sleep after that. He was wondering if Roland could sleep after that little performance. Roland says he didn't hear him, ignoring what Eddie said, and then he almost shot him. Eddie says he didn't hear him because he has a lot on his mind. Roland is again reminded of Cuthbert, but thinks Eddie has surpassed Cuthbert. Eddie says that he wants to see the tower. They all do. Roland needs to let go my ears. Eddie goes on to say that if Roland fell, they would continue on to the beam. Asks Roland if he believes him. Roland thinks they would, but they wouldn't have anywhere else to go, as Eddie would make a piss poor farmer. Roland says he does believe Eddie. And then I'm going to read this direct quote because I love this from Eddie. Roland said, when he asked him if he believes him, he says, yes, he said, I believe you. Upon my soul, I do. Eddie responds, then stop behaving like we're a bunch of sheep and you're the shepherd, walking along behind us, waving a crook to make sure we don't trot our stupid selves off the road and into a quicksand bog. Open your mind to us. If we're going to die in the city or on that train, I want to die knowing I'm more than a marker on your game board. And that's one of those times where I'm just like, damn, you talk to someone like Roland that way?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, I was just upset that he had shut down the conversation. So I was kind of like, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like, tell him how it is and everything. And obviously Roland gets a little upset about this. Not necessarily like upset at Eddie for being an asshole, which has happened. Eddie's been a stubborn asshole. We know this. We talked about this. But this is one of those times where it's Roland that's being the stubborn asshole. Not even necessarily a stubborn asshole, but Roland's in the wrong here in my mind.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, dude, all chips on the table and then you hold back.
Yeah.
It's just like you were saying with Susanna, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's bullshit. You don't come to a table to lay all your chips on the table and then not do it.
And then keep a bunch of secrets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely frustrating. Let's see. Is that your...
Yeah, so
okay.
What do you got here?
I think it's interesting because this is not the exact same clarity about Roland that Susanna had, but it's in the same realm. And though they may come to, and though he may have come to it after she did, they both end up basically in the same place of understanding Roland's games. Mm-hmm. You know, Susanna, she noticed it earlier, and I think Eddie, this is Eddie seeing it now, and it fits perfectly. You know, Susanna is always a little bit ahead of Eddie. Like, just Roland said that she's sharper at things, she's catching on quicker. You know, she learned to shoot first. She there's something about her that's just very natural gunslinger, whereas Eddie has to work a little bit harder at it. And
the one thing I will say is that I also noticed that it's Eddie here talking to Roland, not Susanna. There is a difference there between the two of them. That
personality-wise, 100%. Yeah, because Susanna's more of one that I think she's more agreeable in general, whereas Eddie is like I'm this way with a lot of people, like just where I will like, especially when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I've grown away from it. But I used to just be contrarian just because, and I'd love to just like get a rise out of people and stuff. Yep. So I get that, and there's a certain people that over in my lifetime that I've really butted heads with. Just, you know, if they said the sky was blue, I'd say no, it's green type thing. And so I feel like that is exactly what Eddie is with Roland. So yeah, when it gets discovered, Susanna mostly keeps it to herself. She did call him out on the shit earlier in the book when he kind of treated her poorly with teaching, but overall that was because that was pretty egregious. Whereas like here, she just kind of like realized what Roland's doing, laughs about it and stuff. Whereas Eddie goes to confront him right away and kind of gets in his face about
Eddie
it.
Actually wants to see something change about it. Susanna, I mean, we just had an example of Susanna just kind of brushing something under the rug. Is that literally she talks about it in the first subchapter we covered today, where she's like, oh my God, Roland's leading us around by our nose. Yeah. And then Roland literally does it again, and she doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Do you think, I wonder if she noticed it. Just because King didn't actually mention her noticing it. I wonder if it's one of those things like she realized it, but it doesn't mean that she's immediately going to be like, her antenna are going to be really high to like watch for it at every turn now. May have slipped by her that time. Maybe one of those things where it's just
possible.
Like, you know, later on down the road, she'd be like, fuck, he did it to me again.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways, but the thing I respect about Eddie here versus Susanna is that you keep saying that Susanna's a better gunslinger in that, but at one instance, in one way, Eddie's better because he's actually going to go to Roland. He's actually going to call out his bullshit. He's actually going to demand that he changes. He does it right here. This is not the first time he's done this either.
Yeah.
So I think that's where Eddie has an advantage over Susanna.
And it's a personality difference in a lot of ways.
But it's also something that's going to be very important for a gunslinger is that if you're so timid that you can't call someone out on their bullshit, even if he's your leader.
But she did, though, earlier with the teaching
once,
thing.
But a lot of times she just lets it slide. There's 2 other examples right here where she just lets it slide.
Yeah.
Eddie's always the one that's in his face and understandably frustrating for us. It's like, God damn it, can't you just trust this guy a little bit for some things? But then again, you got to see where Eddie's coming from here. He feels like he's getting led around by the ears and that he's a dumb sheep, and Roland feels like the shepherd to him, that kind of thing.
But then again, it could also just come down to a lot of it could come down to personality differences because Susanna may see it as we are sheep. We don't know a lot about this world, and Roland probably knows better. Just whereas Eddie is going to be one that's like, no, I'm going to challenge him at every turn. So it could be that too. I don't know, and I don't mean to like put Susanna as like putting her up doesn't mean to like be putting Eddie down. It's more of just like I just love that they both come to that same conclusion, but it does take him a little bit longer. And it's just, I don't know. We saw that a little bit mentioned with Roland in book 1 with the flashbacks where like, he was told that he wasn't as...
He doesn't think around corners, but he is...
He'll get there.
But he's better at other things as well. It's the
exactly.
Same thing with Eddie and Susanna. It's that video game thing that you can look at.
Yeah.
Stamina is 10. This one has 8. But
like an
speed
RPG.
Is 10. Yeah, that kind of thing,
Exactly.
But to my point about Eddie is that literally the next part is Roller feels anger heat his cheeks, but it's not because Eddie called him out. But it's because Eddie actually saw through his bullshit.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he knows he's been doing this, and he admits his heart and never stopped judging Eddie and even Susanna when they were prisoners. Eddie to heroin, Susanna to her split mind.
Yeah.
Roland cries Eddie's pardon. Eddie says that they're headed for a hurricane of trouble, but it isn't Roland's trouble alone. It is all of their trouble. Eddie has Roland guess how much trouble, and Roland says, I got a quote here, Roland turned toward the steady sound of the drum beats and thought it over. Maybe not too much. I'd guess the fighting men who are still there are old and demoralized. It may be that you have the straight of it, and some will even offer to help us on our way, as the river crossing quartet did. Mayhap we won't see them at all. They'll see us, see we're packing iron, and just put their heads down and let us go our way. If that fails, I'm hoping that they'll scatter like rats if we gun a few. And if they decide to make a fight of it, Roland smiled grimly. Then, Eddie, we all will remember the face of our fathers. And I just love that, you know what? He gets called out on his bullshit. He feels like shit. His face gets all embarrassed. How easy would it be for him there to just be on the defensive for the entire rest of the conversation?
Yeah.
But Roland is not like that. He's, again, like you said, file it away. What Eddie caught me on, file it away. That's not important.
And he didn't defend himself with Susanna either. When she called him out on the bullshit he pulled on her at the very beginning of this book, he didn't get all defensive and like. So I think that
he even talks about
a good
that
thing,
it's a teaching way to not get defensive when they call you out on it.
Yeah. So I think it says a lot about Roland because I think that if he were a weaker character in some ways, he would kind of dig his heels in and just continue to butt heads. But no, in both cases, he just whatever. So and maybe that's part of it. Maybe part of it is to like do things that will should cause people to call him out and then see how they respond.
Yeah.
And when they do call him out, it's like, good. That's what a gunslinger should do. A gunslinger can't be passive. They can't just roll over,
And that's what I'm saying about Eddie and Susanna is that Susanna is kind of being like that when it's a group setting. When it's one-on-one with Roland, that's the only time she's called him out. Fine. But when it's a group setting, all of a sudden she can't even make up her mind on whether or not what they should do. She's like, oh yeah, well, whatever happens, happens,
Yeah.
And that's where I'm saying is like, there's good and bad in both of them.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't even put one over the other because I think Eddie's more decisive and ready to take up arms and speak out when things are fucked up.
Yeah.
But Susanna figures things out. If she would just speak up a little bit more, maybe things would be better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that maybe one of her weaknesses is just she is not as confrontational.
Yeah.
So that everyone has their pros and cons and weaknesses and strengths, and that's certainly one of hers. And then the other note I had here is I definitely shared the way of viewing both Susanna and Eddie that Roland has here. I equally did not see them as equals to Roland because I was still holding both of those things against them in some way. So it was kind of a slap. As a reader, it was kind of a slap to the face because I was doing the same thing. Like I think there's always part of me that's like, is Detta gonna just crop back up at some point? And then with Eddie, it's just like he is a junkie. Like I didn't have a lot of didn't have a lot of compassion or whatever or trust for him because of not only that but also the way that he acted towards Roland, putting a knife to his throat and stuff. So yeah, I definitely had the same thoughts. So this is kind of a slap to the face, where Roland's realizing it. It was the same for me, or I was like, oh well, I've been doing the same thing. So
yeah,
that's
it's interesting to see the paradigm shift, whereas we as readers have to have that. I wasn't as bad, but I was still there as well.
You're way more empathetic.
I'm really
so.
way more empathetic, especially with my favorite character being Eddie. I really side with him a lot, but still at the same time, I mean, Jesus Christ, this ain't your world, man. Like, this is his world. You still got to trust him.
Yeah.
But I get where he's coming from that, hey, dude, like, if a shitstorm's coming, I want to know if I should grab my umbrella.
Yeah.
And he says there's a hurricane of trouble.
Yeah.
Eddie can recognize that. He knows that this is going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
And he just wants Roland to be square with him.
Yeah.
That's all he's asking. He's not asking Roland to do anything outrageous and be like, oh, Roland, you have to listen to me, and me and Susanna know better than you. He's not being like that. He's just saying, dude, we're with you in this. Like, stop leading us by the ear. Stop being like we're dumb sheep. Like,
yeah.
Open up to us. And that's kind of like, I was saying this analogy specifically for this part. Everyone else opens up and puts their chips on the table, except Susanna apparently held one back. Roland didn't put hardly anything on the table.
Yeah.
And that's where Eddie's calling him for that bullshit. He saw that bluff at the table and went, dude, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, you said we were going all in this hand, and here you are keeping half your chips.
Yeah.
Like,
but I would excuse Roland because I think he's got a lot more, like just if nothing else because of his long life and stuff. And a lot of this, and again, he's not a tangent guy. So he's not going to share anything that he doesn't feel is relevant to that to that conversation. So exactly. I don't think that he's holding it back because he's like, I can't let these people know. It's more just like, no, I know this is going to be a 4-hour conversation if I bring this up, and there's just no sense in even doing that right now. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's, I guess, to defend Roland a bit. I don't think that he's I don't think he's holding back like Susanna is. I think Susanna, that's more like you should be bringing that up. Like, whereas Roland, it's like, he's got a long fucking history of things that potentially could fall into this story in some way. And I don't know, it almost have to be like him narrating the rest of their fucking journey, constantly talking as they're walking to really probably unload all of his stories. So
well, let's put a pin in that conversation, what you just said, because I want to get back to that. So Eddie leaves Roland and thinks about what Antalis has said about Jake, says that both sides will want him and how he promised not to let him drop again.
Yeah.
So instantly Roland goes to, oh shit, I made this promise.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I took it when I was reading it. It's like, damn it. Like I'm in a box here,
Yeah.
Speaking of boxes.
Yeah, I love how he says that he'd put Jake in a moving box if they had 2 more people in their party. I think that says an awful lot about how bad he sees it getting. Because earlier he tells Eddie he doesn't really know, and like and he gives like all these like potential like whatever scenarios, but ultimately he's like, hey, if I had 2 more people, there would just be a fucking moving box around Jake the whole time. And I'm like, that to me says a lot about what Roland might be perceiving what's going to be coming here. So but I think Eddie doesn't seem to really grasp that, because like I think Eddie's already kind of bracing for a hurricane of trouble. I think that if he would have grasped exactly the weight of what that means, of like how much Roland wants to protect Jake because of whatever, I think that would have added a little bit more to Eddie's worry meter. Mm-hmm. So
well, that's exactly what I said, and the reason why I said I wanted to put a pin in is I wanted to get to this point. It ends with Roland thinking he knew something that none of the others did, and he decided to keep it to himself. So he consciously made this choice, and that Charlie and the Choo-Choo, meant death in the old tongue. And again, this is one of those things where I know what you're going to say is that, well, if he tells them this, they're just going to get worried and stuff like that. But that's what Eddie's saying is, dude, that's the point, is you have to stop coddling us. Let us be your equals instead of your sheep.
No, I think for me, what it comes down to is I don't know how relevant it is. Because Charlie the Choo-Choo, yes, but in the world, it sounds like the train's name is Blaine, the Mono. So I think maybe where Roland's thinking is like, cool, there's this book, but like if it were reversed and the book was about Blaine the Mono and the one they were headed toward was Charlie, I think it'd be a whole different scenario. But I think for Roland, it's just like, okay, there's kind of a connection here, but it's kind of at one of those tangent branches. It's like, it may not be anything. It may just be whatever. But so that's how I would view it, is like, if it were flipped and they were heading to Charlie the Choo-Choo and, potentially sitting in Lud, I think there would be potentially, he'd probably be bringing that up and letting everyone know, like, hey, we're heading for a train called Charlie, and Char means fucking death. So you guys better wake up and be like on your guard here. But I think since it is just the book, it is from their world, so
I think that if it was that inconsequential, he wouldn't be decidingly keeping it to himself. I don't think he would have even given it a second thought then, because he is so compartmentalized that is not a necessarily thing. But the fact that he's specifically keeping it from them is a decision, because it does mean something. I think it could mean something, because again, it's also from the book from our side. So ultimately, Charlie, like, it could just be a red herring, and I think that's potentially why Roland's just like, it may not be even be worth bringing up to there, because this may not mean anything, But I don't know. I that's just how I see it, is like, because it is Charlie the Choo-Choo's the book from our world. I could see where Roland might see it as like filed away. It may be something, but it may not be anything, and it'll just be nothing but potentially something that could inhibit everyone by adding another layer of fear and whatever to them when they are potentially running into a shootout. So that's exactly what I said, but that's exactly my point, is that Roland cry after crying pardon from Eddie, and Eddie telling him to stop leading me by the ears. He still doesn't tell Eddie. He still keeps it. He still won't open all the way up. He still won't do it, even though he knows that it's wrong. He admits that it's wrong because he got caught, and he wouldn't be embarrassed being caught if it wasn't wrong. He still does it.
No, I think being wrong is about how he's seeing them and treating them, in terms of seeing them as Eddie's still a junkie and she's still, he
doesn't trust them. If he trusted them, he would be opening up to them, which is what Eddie's asking.
Not with everything, though.
No, that's exactly it. Eddie and them aren't holding anything back. They're not keeping.
But they don't have that many pieces of the puzzle. They're so much more limited in what they have in this world. Whereas Roland, like, he's got a lifetime worth of stuff that could potentially be part of this conversation. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense for him to bring everything up.
That's such an asinine comment to say, is that, oh, well, his experience in the world is just too much for them to take in. Their heads couldn't handle it. No, he literally has a direct correlation to something that is in Jake's fucking pack, and he's keeping it from them because it's a bad omen. That is a conscious decision.
But again,
for that one specific thing, he literally just cried Eddie's pardon for keeping shit from him, and Eddie caught him in doing it, and he's embarrassed by it, and then he still does it. Literally got his hand caught in the cookie jar. Oh, sorry, Mom. Mom turns her back and puts his hand back in the cookie jar.
Yeah, I
same thing.
I don't think it is. I would disagree. Because it is potentially completely. It may have no bearing.
It could, but it could also mean the life and death of one of his quartet members, and he's keeping it to himself again.
But them knowing it isn't going to change that.
Could it?
No.
What if it puts their guard up more? What if it makes it so that they're actually taking this more seriously, and Eddie stops thinking about helpful elves and is like, fuck, this is going to be a world of shit.
I think Eddie's past that now. I think Roland would probably use this to change Eddie's mind if he thought that Eddie was still in that mindset of like, this city's going to be happy elves and Elrond and, councils and shit. Like, but I think Eddie at this point is well beyond that now. I don't think Eddie's still there, because I think that's the kind of thing Roland would do. Is I think he would use the Char thing to get Eddie kind of more on guard if Eddie wasn't, but I think Eddie's beyond that now. I would agree with you totally if we were last episode when we were further back in the timeline and Eddie was still like even secretly hopeful, but I think Eddie's had that completely squashed at River Crossing and stuff. I don't think Eddie is in that mindset anymore. So
the last thing I'm going to say on this is that if Roland wants them to be honest with him, Susanna keeping her secret, we bashed on her for that. Roland needs to lead by example then. He shouldn't keep anything from them.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I just don't think they're the same. I think her being pregnant is like a huge fucking thing that is going to put a whole fucking spin on everything even beyond what we're looking at here. This is going to potentially impact, like, even if they just roll through, Ludd and it's just nothing happens. It's just a happy-go-lucky place. Everyone's hiding from them. This pregnancy is going to be something that's going to come into it all, whatever. Whereas again, like Char, I don't know, that could or couldn't be something important. So I don't know. Difference of opinion, which could happen. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't see it as, like I said, if it were reversed, if Charlie were actually the name of the real train, I'd be like, yeah, Roland absolutely has to fucking say something. But since it's just the book, that's probably where his mind is at. It's like, it's just a book. It's from their world. There may be a connection here, but again, Roland's not really the... Maybe it's more his type to just like look around that a little bit or say, whatever. Like, book, whatever. Because where was it? There was something in, was it earlier in this book or was it the last book where something was being brought up? And I remember being interested by it. Roland just had absolutely no fucking, like, what? He just completely ignored it. It's like, that's not interesting. Like, he doesn't say that's not interesting, but it's essentially what he says. It's just, he completely breezes by something. And like, I can't remember if it was Eddie or Susanna that's like, wait.
It was Eddie.
Hey, wait, what about, and he's just like, he doesn't even compute that there's anything interesting. He's just like, and I remember being on Eddie's side where I'm like, wait, no, that's interesting. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And then Roland is just, he's almost like a robot. He just doesn't care. So I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing though. And of course, that's the perfect Stephen King thing too, right? Char meant death to be the last line of the chapter.
Yep.
Isn't that the perfect Stephen King? He's done that. We've talked about it repeatedly. He is so good at that kind of shit. Just the very last thing where it's just like, when I remember reading it for the first time and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's just like, God damn you, Stephen King. He's really good at that kind of stuff, man. I love him. I love him for it. Let's see. So that is, okay. I love the exchange, let's see. Did I answer your question? Nope, but you played me straight. By this point, I figured these two would never really jive. There's always going to be an antagonistic relationship with their partnership, kind of like brothers that are always sniping at each other, and at every second, and always second guessing each other. Like, I just feel like there's never going to be like a simpatico with these two. They're always going to be oil and water a little bit. And that isn't a bad thing. That isn't like, I think that's even a good thing in some cases with like teams or, whatever. I mean, why do like a lot of buddy cop things work so well when you have the opposite partners, right? Like every freaking one. But that always ends up being a strength in some way to where they play against off each other to a point where they then cover way more space. Whereas if they were two of the exact same people, it wouldn't be good. But I think this is just the point though, where it's just like, even after this little come to Jesus meeting, like at the end of it, it's just like, do you think I told you the truth? No, but I think you played me straight. Like okay, I think that at this point I gave up any indication that this like tension with them would ever cease, because I think I had a little bit of hope that they may be able to resolve something and get kind of on the same page. But this is the point where I was like, nope, never going to happen. Nope, this is going to be until the last page of this freaking series. I bet you these two are going to be in this way, and that's fine. In fact, from Stephen King's perspective, it's a more interesting way to write it, because it would be a way more boring if Eddie just kind of did the Susanna and fell in line and just kept his mouth shut.
Or if Roland went to what I'm saying and opened up everything and just started trusting Eddie like a co-leader of the quartet, and they were all equal, and then he wasn't the leader and had the more experience and everything like that. But this brings to mind what you're talking about. Is there's a book that's talking about a country having a foreign policy where if you bring in, there's 7 advisors, if you bring them in and you're talking about a situation and 6 of them agree that it's going to go one way, option A, the 7th's job is to say, that's bullshit. Just so that in the off chance that something crazy happens.
Yeah.
That you have that. That's the kind of thing.
It's the not having yes men, right? Like the downfall of so many people is just they're surrounded by yes men. Like, and whether that's a military leader, whether that's a country leader, whether that's a freaking leader of a company, there's so many people that the whole road to their destruction was being surrounded by yes men. And, that just their ability to like think critically just atrophies. Because they're around yes men, they're never challenged. So then like that
they never think that they can have a bad idea or do something wrong.
Yeah, that sharpness that they may have developed growing up into that point, then it just atrophies and dies, and then it's the downfall. Like it's old of story as what we talked about earlier with the whole self-fulfilling prophecy. It happens all the time all throughout history.
I know we both have been reading a lot about World War II recently, and it is exactly what happened to Hitler.
Even Caesar, right?
Yeah.
Caesar was the same thing. Caesar was like one thing, and then it got to a certain point where it's just like he was no longer challenged, and then he became what he became, and then he gets turned into a pincushion. Like so you're talking going back into ancient history. So yeah, it's just a story as old as time, whether you're talking literature, whether you're talking reality.
Yeah.
It just happens all the time. So yeah.
And so that's where it's actually a good thing that this happens with Roland and Eddie, is that
Eddie's never going to stop.
If that's how it's going to be, then good. He's going to be questioning Roland, and maybe he'll keep him from making
him on
a mistake.
his toes. Yeah, exactly.
And it goes both ways.
Yeah,
Roland will keep Eddie on his toes and keep Eddie from making mistakes as well.
Yeah,
that's where what we were talking about with Susanna is frustrating, is that she's not involved with this because she just, all right, whatever. She's kind of a yes woman, kind of thing.
A bit.
I
think some of it comes down to her maybe more refined culture. Like she's from the 60s. She's from a more rich family. Like there's going to be a certain, whereas like Eddie's kind of a,
street kid.
Low,
he's a street kid.
Like not even middle class. Yeah, he's kind of from a poor family on the streets of New York. Like in the 1980s, like there's just this, the late 80s too. There's just this element of like there's going to be a much different set of experiences with the two, and I think Susanna's is going to be more about like that polished, like if she is going to challenge Roland, it's never going to be in front of the group because that's not proper, so I don't think that she's necessarily a yes person, but I do think that she's going to be far more like reserved of when she's going to take her shots.
She doesn't want to undermine his authority.
Yeah, exactly, because that's not what a proper person does, right? Like she's from a different time. She would have had etiquette classes and stuff in her reality, whereas Eddie probably doesn't know how to spell etiquette. And I'm not saying that to mean he's stupid. I'm just like he's from a whole different fucking reality, man. So I don't know. Definitely interesting though. Cool dynamics that King's built in this team here. So
and this is like the first real section with them. Ever since they pulled,
without interruptions, because I mean, River Crossing, but it was like so much is going on with River Crossing, you couldn't really get.
But even from the speaking ring through River Crossing to here, this is where you get your first taste of the quartet, how it's going to be,
what the team's going to look like
with all four of them, 5 with Oi, and you're getting the feel for there's going to be the contention between Eddie and Roland. There's going to be Susanna and her contention with Roland, but not as outspoken about it. And then Jake even has questions with Roland. I mean, hell, one of the first things he asks him when he pulls him through the door, hey, you going to kill me again?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first question to someone who gets introduced to the group. I mean, imagine that for the X-Men. Hey, welcome to the X-Men. Great. You guys going to kill me again?
Yeah.
I mean,
morph.
Yeah, no kidding.
But no, I think that's a little bit different too. I think Jake's so far is overly not feeling like that. I think he did that because that betrayal is such a big underpinning, but once that's resolved, I don't know yet. I don't think we have enough information on what kind of player he's going to be in this team, because yes, there is that feels very Eddie-ish, but that's also, what are you going to say?
But again, this
what are you going to say to Roland after that's the last thing you experience with him is him betraying you? So it's like that's got to be addressed up front, and then after that you can figure out.
Like I said, this is the first taste. This is the first scoop of a sundae. Like we don't have the toppings.
We don't know
here.
yet.
We don't have what fruit we're going to put on there. Are we going to put Cool Whip? Are we going to put Ready Whip? We don't know. Nuts, no nuts.
Cool Whip.
Yeah, there's so much still to come to figure out, but this is our first taste, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that is that your last note?
Yeah.
All right, so that will carry us. That'll finish the subchapter. So that means finish the chapter entirely.
Yes.
So that means that we are closing the episode up, but we got to do our spoiler section.
Yes.
Which means that from the podcast side, on the YouTube side, we'll go ahead and change over to the bright red screen here. But if you're on the podcast side,
we still need like a klaxon. Spoilers ahead.
Yes, spoiler section is now basically. So if you're on the podcast side and you have not finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, now is the time to stop the episode. Maybe once you finish it, you can come back to this episode and it'll be in your player. Even if you've deleted the download, a lot of times it'll save where you're at. You may be able to still download this and start right back in this section and then finish this off. But from now on, spoilers are ahead.
So what we need is a little like alarm going off. Captain, spoilers ahead. That's what we need for our little soundbite when we get to this section in book clubs.
Yeah, I could probably get a klaxon alarm.
There you go.
That'd be good. Maybe get some flashing emoji lights. No. Don't they have flashing emoji lights?
No, we don't need flashing we don't need anything emoji.
Yeah, I think we need more emojis.
No.
Maybe one of these days we're just going to have emojis all over the slideshow.
Just get out of here. No.
All right, so spoiler section ahead here. So spoiler section, let's go ahead and dive in. What do you got?
Dude, every single time I get to this part, I smile because of our intro. Every single time,
yeah.
I just freak out. But also because we're getting close to Eddie's best moment.
We're heading there. We got a ways.
We got a ways, but we're still almost to Eddie's greatest moment. This is like the build up at the start of the movie where he kicks ass. I don't care if it's in the next book. I still fucking love it.
Like when you get to the end of A New Hope and you're getting ready to get to the glorious Empire Strikes Back where Vader starts to whip the ass of all the rebels the whole time.
When you get to the end of A New Hope and you see Luke going down the trench run and you know he's going to nail that shot.
You just can't wait to get to the next movie when Vader starts winning.
No.
It's the best.
No. Stop it. What do you got?
You got the next one.
Oh, okay. Did you think Roland would let them down, especially after his talk with Eddie, like keeping things like we just had a big lengthy discussion about it. I thought he would.
What do you mean?
Like this whole, hey, stop leading us around, treat us like equals and everything like that. And then he still keeps stuff from them. Man, I got such a dark, ominous feeling like, fuck, he's going to let all of them drop, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think that nothing's changed for me in this section. It goes back to that point when Roland made the promise, then in his internal monologue, it's like, is that really true?
That
happened at least twice.
Yeah.
And that still is on my mind when I'm reading this section where I'm just like, none of that's changed. Roland is like making promises, and then in his mind, we're getting the clarity that he doesn't even know if those are real.
Yeah.
So no. I don't have any hope that he's actually like whatever.
I think he finally we'll cover it when we get there, but just for the spoiler, when he finally takes off after Jake after he's kidnapped, I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's not like last time.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, not this time. Like thank God.
Yeah.
Okay. That's when I could officially close the book on my doubts on Roland.
Yeah.
Like for me, that was it. Like
okay.
After that was when I was done doubting Roland.
Yeah.
Is when he went after Jake.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. Indeed. So for me, I think it's pretty cool to see the DNA of Susanna's choice not to pursue the tower after everyone dies. It's being set up here. This early in the story, she acknowledges the pull, but has no real heart for the tower.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know if I can really say that King at this point knew how it would resolve, and that Susanna was never really fully invested. But just like earlier on when Eddie's like, I'm gonna go through hell to whatever, and then like Susanna's just like, I could feel getting knocked on the head, but with
this way, dummy.
Yeah, but that's not an answer. Like that's like one of those lawyer things where it's like you act like it sounds like you answered, but you really didn't say anything. Yeah. So it's just to me, I think this just is Susanna, the early DNA, yeah. And if King isn't for sure knowing, I wonder if by the time he got to book 7, when he was doing his re-listens, because we have heard that he did the audiobooks when he was prepping for a new book. I wonder if maybe this is one of those things that popped out to him where when he's prepping book 7.
Susanna on the stand. Are you going to go to the Dark Tower through hell and high water to be with him? I plead the 5th.
Yeah, he just gasps. So I think it's really cool because I think even if King didn't, because we know the decades involved over the writing of this.
Yeah.
We said, like I said earlier in the episode, 1991. So this from 1991 to 2004, or 2003. Let's call it probably when he wrote it, 2002, 2003. That's a good chunk of time. So I don't know that he necessarily, this was certainly all out planned, but if nothing else, it worked out in a way to where this jives perfectly with the end of Susanna's journey. So. Yeah. I don't know. I love it. I just think it's really cool. I feel like it kind of like the old Lebowski rug, it feels like it's tying the whole story together because the end of Susanna's journey and this, they jive. There's no split for me here. I see it. I see, I think she is more invested in her love, like, Eddie, and she will eventually fall in love with Jake in a way of like a childish, like a motherly love with Jake, to where like those are the things that drive her in this story. Mm-hmm. She's never a tower junkie, so that's why she's the one that ends up getting redemption when it all happens, and she goes the right way.
Do you think maybe it's something to do with the pregnancy? right here. Like, this is the first time we've seen this from Susanna, and she's pregnant.
What do you mean though? Like
her indecision, like not wanting to go through hell and high water to get to the tower and everything. Do you think the pregnancy plays part of it?
I mean, I don't know, because
what if she is corrupted? You know?
No, I mean, the other thing though is that I truthfully believe she doesn't fully know, because I think she's in some kind of self-denial right here. You know, because she's like, oh, she still doesn't know for sure. It's just a late period.
I know.
So I think from her perspective at this point, I truly believe she doesn't know that she's pregnant right now. She has some suspicions, and there's some self deception going on.
I'm not saying this is a conscious decision because she's pregnant. I'm saying that because she's pregnant with a demon child, you know, from a speaking ring, a demon that's, you know, impregnated her, does that change who she is as a person to where it influences her decisions going forward? I mean, hell, she abandons the quartet.
Yeah,
to save their lives and everything like that.
It's to help them out. I don't think so.
To me, it's like realizing that it's this far back, and this far back she has indecision about how far she would go to get to the tower. Like, Eddie would die crawling if he had to. Two broken legs, a broken arm, he'd still be using that one arm to crawl kind of thing.
The other thing is, I don't think Jake's that. I think Jake's 100% about Roland. Mm-hmm. Like, if Roland at a certain point decided I'm not doing the tower anymore, like Jake could follow him.
Right, let's go.
Yeah, and Eddie would keep going. I think like Eddie's a tower junkie. He's sold on this. So, and I just don't think Susanna's there. I think Eddie is pretty unique in that. Eddie and Roland have that.
Do you think it's because she hasn't seen the tower? I mean, when we look at what we know now, and Jake too. When we look at what we know now, what we know later on, Roland sees the tower in the grapefruit.
Yeah.
Eddie saw the tower in the rose in his dream.
Yeah.
Jake supposedly did. He saw the field of roses and he saw the tower,
and she denies a chance to do it later on because of the baby.
See, that's what I'm saying.
So,
it's like I'm wondering if something has changed in her where it's affected her ability to want to go.
No, I just don't think it was ever like, I think her selling into this world is because of Eddie. And I don't think if Eddie wasn't there, I don't think she ever would have followed Roland. I don't think she has. I just don't think she's wired the same way. So yeah, I don't know, and I don't want to. I guess I don't really fully like the idea of putting it on the pregnancy anyway, because I don't know that it has that. I think it was already there before. I just don't think that. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's Eddie seeing it in the dream that really caused it with him, but. Also, he's kind of got that addictive personality, so it's not that it would take that, you know, like he just needed something else to get in that place. And that happens to a lot of people. You know, people will be addicted to something, and then when they break it, they end up getting addicted to something else.
Instead of chewing tobacco, you chew gum.
Yeah, there's always some kind of, maybe not always, but there's a lot of times there's a trade-off in some way. So I think for him, there was just kind of that trade-off, and it was the natural thing to be the tower. And then he does see it, so maybe that's a point that maybe adds to it. Maybe. But yeah, I just don't think she ever really fully bought into it. So to see that all set up here is really cool.
Agamorphy says, this discussion today really highlights again for me how fantastic Stephen King builds characters. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's it's hard to beat him, for sure.
There's a couple times that you said when we were talking, like, a lesser character would have done this. A lesser character would have been this way. And I'm just like, dude, that's because Stephen King doesn't write shitty characters. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's why they didn't do what you're saying they could have done.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that, but I would have gone deep into spoilers because that is how Roland is.
Yeah.
Is because he has that untrusting nature of everyone. Not just, you know, a heroin addict and a former I always forget
multiple personality.
Split personality or multiple.
Yeah.
Is there really a difference? It's not schizophrenia. That's the wrong one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's actually a newer phrase for multiple personality as well. I forget what it is, but yeah.
And then Agamorphy also says she has been through other types of hell in her travels. She already knows what she is in for. So maybe that's, you know, when you've already been through shit. You know, it's like the veterans going into war. You heard about this, like I said, World War II.
Well, I mean, ultimately, like Eddie. Cool. Eddie doesn't have an easy life.
No.
But dude, his life is fucking cake compared to what hers has been.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like, yes, she's from a wealthy family, But like, think of the shit she's gone through. Like,
well, she even inserts herself into shit. I mean, like, let's be perfectly honest.
The Detta stuff.
Not only the Detta stuff, but the race riots.
Yeah.
Dude, she doesn't go to the race riots in New York. She doesn't go to Washington, D.C. She goes to goddamn Mississippi and Alabama.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's be perfectly honest. There's places down there that's still bad.
Yeah, no, that's true. So not only that, but then the brick, the train, like so Eddie. I'm not, and I hate that because a lot of people take these kind of things where it's like, you know, saying someone has it worse than you. People think that means that you didn't have it hard. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that Eddie's is cake compared to what she's gone through. She's been through a lot of shit. So for her to say something like, "Oh yeah, I'm willing to go through hell," like she's been through that. She knows more what that entails than what Eddie does. Like Eddie might be in for a rude awakening when he actually sees potentially what's ahead of him, where she has been through a lot. Not to, even the multiple personality. I mean, how hard would that be too? Imagine just like blacking out for fucking days or weeks and just losing time and stuff. I don't know. That'd be tough. So. Also, Susanna's realization about Roland's nature is still the main definition of gunslinger in my mind. Like, if you had me recap what a gunslinger is in this story, it would pretty much be recapping what she says here. Like the whole thing about a knight, you know, a dignitary, a diplomat, like all these things like that. Literally, those are the things that I still would define as a gunslinger for me. So it's pretty cool that this is the point that King really. Oops, I just did something weird there. This is the point where King really defines kind of what a gunslinger is for me, and to the point where that still sticks. Like, even before we read this section, if you would have asked me on the last roundtable, what is a gunslinger, if I would have just, you know, spit it all out, it easily would have jived, not word for word, but it would have jived with what Susanna said in this section. So I think it's really cool to see kind of her, and we end up seeing it later. Roland's story, the Knightley stuff, ends up becoming the dictating thing about why they help the Kala people. Like, the rest of them are like, no, let's just. This is our duty. Yeah, the rest of them are like, no, we got to keep going. This is
bad.
This is on our.
This is bad here, but what we're doing over there is way more important.
Exactly, and Roland just kind of shuts it all down in a Knightley way. So it's just like, I think it's really cool and really defining for gunslingers, and we see it here pretty early on early in the whole story, midway through book 3, and then. Do you think that Roland not being a full member of the Quartet actually sticks with the rest of the story? Because I feel like King kind of says that here, but I think as the story goes, the Quartet, Roland's as much a part of it as anyone else. And then the rest of my note, it says, it feels like to me that it is stated here, but then it kind of vanishes as the story chugs on. I only see Roland as kind of an outsider in this, like he's part of the Quartet, but kind of an outsider of it. I only see that in this immediate range of this. I feel like once you get later in the books, like he's I think that outsider nature and that he's a lesser member, like that's all gone later. Like, not even that far. I think by the end of this book, it's probably gone.
I think it's interesting because I see it throughout the entire series. Is that he's always on the outside looking in. Because there's parts where he still treats them this way. In book 5, Jake calls him on his bullshit. In book 6...
Jake calls everyone on their bullshit.
Jake calls everyone on their bullshit. That's true, but he also calls Roland specifically on this bullshit that he's still doing 2 books later.
And they all get called out for that because they're all hiding stuff.
It's true. But here they, except for Susanna, Eddie put everything on the table. So did Jake.
No, I know, but when Jake calls shit out, he's calling out that all of them are keeping secrets of some kind, and that it's breaking kind of their mojo.
Okay, where did they learn that from?
I think it's human nature.
I think they learned it at Roland's knee right here.
I think
if Roland's the fucking teacher teaching them how to be gunslingers, he damn well taught them to keep secrets.
No, I think that's the human nature, man.
You can pass that off all you want. We can see right here examples of Roland doing it.
Yeah, but we all do that. It's a normal, natural human thing, and I think that putting it on Roland would be kind of cheap. I think it's a human trait, and I think the whole idea of like a team. Even if it's just like a team in any way in real life too, one of the hardest things a lot of times was for people to break their walls down. So I think you would see the same kind of things potentially on a sports team or a band or some kind of group of people that are coming together for some common thing. Yeah, like exactly. So that's why I would say no, I wouldn't put it on Roland. I'd put it on. That's just human nature, and we all just love to kind of.
I mean, there's a door at the end where he could walk through and be with his quartet, and he chooses not to.
Yeah,
it's there. It's there throughout.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think I don't know that I don't interpret that as being an outsider. I interpret that as like the tower is always going to be the most important thing to him, and he shouldn't.
That's what keeps him from being a true member of the quartet. This quartet may not necessarily be about getting to the tower.
No, this makes it seem like it's because he's from another world. That's the other, that whole thing of like he's an outsider because he's not from their world. He's a lesser part of the quartet. I just feel like all that disappears.
Well, remember, that's not Stephen King saying that. That's Roland saying that. That's not an internal monologue where Roland's thinking that and that's King implanting that. That's Roland telling Eddie and them.
No, I know, but I just in my mind I feel like that's something that maybe King kind of drops at a certain point because I just don't think that. I don't think King ever really, and maybe as we go through this book club, through all the rest of these books, maybe I'll find that I'm wrong, but I just feel like he kind of drops it. I think we've seen some of those things, where, because again, he wrote these over fucking decades. It's not like he sat down in like a 5-year period and wrote this whole thing out.
What is it, 20-something years? 24
years? 1977 through 2003.
Almost 30 years.
Or 2004 is when the one was published, but he wrote it in 2002, 2003, right after the accident.
So really, really close to 30 years.
Yeah. So there's going to be some crumbs that he'll drop, and I just feel like I've always thought that every time I've hit this outside of the first time because I didn't know, but every time I've hit this on a reread, I've always just been like, I don't feel like this really sticks. I feel like they kind of keep him out of it through maybe even the rest of this book, but I feel like as things go through, especially after the storytelling in book 4, I feel like there's like a closeness that they all have that I feel like the quartet is a singular thing in the future. So that's interesting. We'll see how it plays out as we go on, because it's cool that you didn't see it the same way, because that's always bothered me, or I'm like, did King just like forget it? Did he give up on it? Did he? I don't know. I've always interpreted it that way. So we'll see how it goes. And anyone in the chat can let us know what you guys think too. But Agamorph says dissociative personality disorder. That's the new phrasing. And it was in. Moon Knight mentions it as well. So, but I've heard it over the last like 5 or 6 years. I've heard it in different ways where like I'll hear that randomly. But, that's the new phrasing for it. So the new like clinical terms for it.
Yeah.
So. And then also the other thing I wanted to point out is Eddie speaks for Susanna, that tail end section, but I think he's assuming his own desires into her because we have been given no indication that she has the same zeal for the tower that Eddie does. And I don't think this is the exact same conversation that we just had, because I think it's just kind of one of those things that it might just be kind of assuming a little bit. And I think that could happen with marriages and stuff where it's just like, we think this, or we liked this movie, and then the wife's like, oh no, I didn't like wait, what?
Oh, you didn't like it? I thought we loved that.
It's just it's easy to throw the we there, and it just and it says, and knowing the whole story that we know, she doesn't really have that. So I think Eddie is letting his own desire cloud her desire a little bit. So I just found that interesting because like they're in that confrontation with Roland, he's like, we're all into it and stuff, and I'm just like, you got a frog in your pocket there?
Because who's the we?
Like Susanna's kind of feeling a little bit wishy-washy right now, and I've seen the end of the story. She doesn't really follow through. So I just find that interesting because, again, that is the perfect reality because you just said you felt the same. Like, we've all seen that. And and it doesn't even have to be marriages. It could be friendships. It could be teammates. It could be – there's all kinds of different like relationships where we do that kind of stuff.
Literally had one with my wife last week.
Yeah, it
literally did.
So it's so realistic that I love it. And also, King doesn't really draw attention to it. He just does it, and it's kind of one of those things that I think you have to kind of be going through it with a fine-tooth comb like we're doing to really catch it, because I think it's easy to just breeze by that too and be so focused on their conversation and their Roland and Eddie's confrontation that you kind of just miss that little point. But if you're going through the fine-tooth comb, you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So I just think it's really cool. I like that. And again, I almost brought that up in the non-spoiler section because earlier in with Susanna not really giving an answer, I feel like there was enough there. But I'm like, I moved to the spoiler section because I was like, I wanted the tail end of it to also be brought in.
Because also like how Susanna ends and how she leaves and everything like that. Multiple times. I mean, one time to save the quartet, one time just to cry off altogether is important with what you're saying, is that it's not something that just came by later on and just suddenly this character did this and wow, that's such a change. I can't believe that. But I mean, here's the seeds planted in book 3.
Yeah, exactly. Which is so cool, man. I love it. Especially because it is written over such a long period of time. If King just wrote this in a 5-year period, there's some of this stuff that I wouldn't find as cool as I do. But since he wrote it over like a 30-year period and we kind of know how King writes, he doesn't really plot or he doesn't like do outlines and stuff. He just like kind of plods through the whole thing. I just think it's really cool when things really connect, like, because it's just like, I don't know, it's almost right? Like, it doesn't feel
exactly.
It feels like it's kind of one of those things that just so happens to all work together in a way, because I don't know if King consciously wrote that in 1991 or 1990, because it was probably written a year earlier than it was published. I don't know if he was thinking. I don't know if he knew where Susanna's end was going to be in the story in that period. So he's kind of throwing that out there, and it just so happens because of Ka that it all wraps up. I love it.
Oh yeah,
really cool. So yeah, that is it for this chapter. We will be back. I wanted to remind everyone again here in the closing, the 11th of June. We're only going to have one live show. It is going to be a long one because we're going to record both Roundtable 122 as well as Book Club number 16. So I will get those videos scheduled, so they'll be on the YouTube so you can see it. But just know if you're one of our live people, and totally okay if you can't stay the whole time, because that is it'll be a long one. But yeah, basically we're going to have both episodes on the same day. So be ready to join us there. That isn't the next episode, but I wanted to mention it for the book club specifically, because the next book club will be that episode. So we do have one more round table before that happens, but wanted to mention it here. So that'll be really fun. Then on the outro stuff, also, if you guys want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of your podcast delivery systems, if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. If you want to stream us, you can do it on Spotify or Stitcher. Find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com, including the new questions for new listeners. Become a patron over at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver if you want to support us. And, of course, if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know how to do that.
Best way to reach us is email us is darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. And then, like Ted was saying, our shows are here on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Like, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications for when we drop new videos and when we're going live. And then our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. And then our Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/user/darktowerpalaver.
Indeed. So on the podcast side, we will sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone on the YouTube, thank you guys for joining us. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys for being part of the conversation. That's always fun. You guys are awesome. And yeah, we will be back in a fortnight for a roundtable. So we will see you guys. What is the date on that? The 21st. So still feels like that's Memorial Day. I know sometimes it falls where Memorial Day is later than that, but that feels pretty close to Memorial Day time period. So yeah, we'll be there.
It's the weekend before, right?
This time, yeah. So yeah, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks, and yeah, thank you guys. Who do we have? Agamorphy, DTP Peter. I don't know who the hell that person is. Some crazy person. Carol, Cody. Let's see,
Zach.
Alan, Zach. Yeah, thank you guys all for joining us. You guys are awesome. Always fun to have you guys as part of the conversation. See you in a fortnight.
Bye, everyone.